Lightning through the heart, neck snapped, decapitated. None of it fucking worked. This blonde menace kept walking, kept healing, and started deleting every foreign power he touched. Every immortal, every god, every seal that thought it was permanent got purged the same way. Absolute menace.
Konoha never raised a fist at Naruto Uzumaki. A fist leaves bruises, and bruises leave paperwork, and paperwork lands on the Hokage's desk. So the village used doors instead, shopkeepers who shut them, landlords who bolted them, restaurant owners who flipped their signs to closed when a small blonde shadow crossed their threshold, then flipped them back the moment he shuffled away. Every merchant in the village, hidden in the leaves, learned the same trick, and they taught it to each other over tea, and they called it keeping the peace. By the time he was 7 years old, Naruto Uzumaki weighed less than a sack of rice and had learned to sleep on his stomach because it pressed the hunger flat. He had a routine. Wake before dawn. Walk the eastern market before the crowd because a few of the fruit stalls left bruised produce in crates behind their shops, and a boy who moved fast could get a mouthful before anyone shouted. Drink from the public fountain by the academy. Go to the ramen stand at dusk, where an old man named Tucci always found a reason to have made too much, and a daughter who always found a reason to look away while Naruto ate. That one stand was the entire ceiling of his world. Then came the winter. The land of fire lost half its rice harvest to floods, prices tripled, and Tochi shuttered Ichiraku for 2 months to keep from going under. Naruto lasted 11 days on fountain water and a stolen radish. On the 12th, he stood outside the chain-link fence of Training Ground 44, with his fingers hooked through the wire, staring at the sign that said, "Do not enter," in red paint that had faded to the color of old blood. The forest of death. Everyone said the trees ate people. Everyone said the tigers there were the size of houses. Everyone also said there was food. Naruto climbed the fence. He was too weak to climb it well. He fell on the other side, tore his palm open on a root, and lay in the wet leaf rot, listening to something enormous breathe in the canopy above him. He got up anyway. He walked because stopping meant lying down. And lying down meant a small, ugly voice in his skull that had been getting louder all week would finally get to finish its sentence. He walked for 6 hours. He found no berries. He found no water he trusted. He found a stream and drank from it and threw it back up. He found a tiger track wide enough to sit in and kept walking past it, because dying by tiger and dying by starving looked the same from where he stood. On the 7th hour, the ground opened under him. He fell 20 feet through a lattice of roots and hit stone. Something in his ribs went wrong. He lay there in absolute blackness, breath whistling, and waited to find out whether the fall had killed him. It hadn't. It had done something stranger. There was light down here. Not sunlight. A slow blue pulse, like a heartbeat with nowhere to go, coming from further in. Naruto crawled toward it, because crawling toward light was the only instruction his body had left. The cavern he crawled into was bigger than the Hokage Tower's council hall, and it was old in a way that made the hair on his arms stand up. The walls were carved. Not chiseled, carved in one motion by something that had treated granite like wet clay. 9 circles in a ring. A figure at the center of them holding a staff, and above the figure a tree with roots that ran the entire length of the ceiling and fruit hanging off it that some hand had scratched out of the stone, gouged away, ruined on purpose. At the center of the floor, on a pedestal that had cracked and slumped with the centuries, sat a chest of black wood banded in gold. The pulse was coming from inside it. Naruto Uzumaki, 7 years old, 90 pounds of nothing, dragged himself the last 20 feet on his elbows and pushed the lid up with his head because his arms had quit. There was one thing inside. A pineapple. It was blue. Not painted blue, not lit blue, grown blue, with a rind swirled in tight spirals like someone had drawn whirlpools all over it, and it glowed from within on that slow 4-count pulse. It smelled like nothing at all, which somehow made it worse. He looked at it for a long time. "Your food," he told it, and his voice came out as gravel. "That's all I need from you." He bit into it. The taste hit him like a punch in the sinuses, rotten seawater, ash from a house fire, something metallic and old and wrong that made his throat try to close and his stomach try to crawl up out of his mouth. He chewed anyway. He chewed with tears running down his face and both hands clamped over his jaw to keep it shut, and he swallowed, and then he swallowed again. And then the pineapple was gone, and he was on his side on the stone floor of a dead god's cellar, retching at nothing. And then the hunger stopped, not eased, stopped, the way a scream stops when a door closes. 11 days of a hook dragging behind his navel simply lifted out of him and was gone, and into the empty socket it left. Something poured in. It came up through the soles of his feet. It filled his legs, his gut, his chest, and when it reached his heart, it caught, the way a lamp catches. Blue fire came off Naruto's skin. It rolled up his arms and over his shoulders and off the ends of his hair, gold at the edges, blue at the core, and it was cold. It ran over his torn palm, and the cut sealed itself in the time it took him to gasp. It ran over his ribs, and the broken thing inside straightened and knit and stopped mattering. It ran over 11 days of starvation, and 11 days of starvation lost the argument. Naruto sat up in the middle of a fire that didn't burn him and laughed until he sobbed. Deep behind his navel, behind a seal he had never seen and would learn about years later, something enormous opened one eye in a red sea and said out loud to itself, "What?" The nine-tailed fox had spent 7 years watching this boy's body from the inside. It knew that body. It had healed that body 100 times without permission and without thanks. And what had just walked into the room was not its chakra, and it did not answer to the seal, and it did not answer to the fox. "That's not mine." Kurama's claws flexed against the water. "Whatever you just put in your mouth, brat, that is not mine." Naruto didn't hear a word of it. He was too busy standing up. He came out of the forest of death 2 days later, at dawn, walking. The ambu on the perimeter fence found him strolling out of the tree line with his hands in his pockets and a stray blue ember curling off his shoulder like a moth. And when they asked him what he had been doing in a restricted training ground for 48 hours, Naruto Uzumaki looked up at 4 masked killers and shrugged. "Groceries," he said. Hiruzen Sarutobi read that report 3 times, then went to see the boy himself and found him sitting on the roof of his apartment, watching the sun come up, and asked him if anything had happened out there. Naruto thought about the carved walls, the ruined tree, the chest. "I got dinner," he said. "I'm good now, old man." It was the first lie he ever told the third Hokage, and he told it because he had already done the math that morning while the fire cooled in his chest. A village that shuts doors on a boy for existing will take anything he shows them and find a way to make it another door. So he kept the fire. He fed it. He learned it in the woods at night the way other children learn to ride bicycles. Badly, painfully, laughing. He learned that he could snap his own finger backward and watch it straighten in half a second. He learned that a 2-story fall did nothing. Then a 4-story fall. Then he found a cliff. He learned, at 8 years old, sitting on the branch of a tree at midnight with his heart hammering, that if he stopped thinking about arms as arms, they came apart into feathers and light and became something with a 12-foot span. He learned to fly by falling off that cliff 9 times in a row. The 10th time, he didn't hit the ground. And somewhere in those 4 years, between the flight lessons and the broken bones that stopped counting as broken, the starving boy who used to sleep on his stomach turned into something else entirely. Not loud. That's what surprised the ones who had known him before. A boy the village had spent 7 years telling to disappear could have come out of it screaming for attention. Naruto came out of it easy. Hands in his pockets, shoulders loose, eyes half-lidded like the world had already shown him its best material and he'd found it fine. Thanks. He walked slow because nothing could make him hurry. He spoke slow because nothing could make him shout. He picked up a verbal habit somewhere in there, a little trailing sound on the end of his sentences when he was relaxed. And by the time anyone thought to ask about it, it was already just how Naruto talked. Yoi. By 11, half the academy class had a story about him. Choji Akamichi had one about the day 3 older boys cornered him behind the equipment shed over his weight, and how Naruto had walked into the middle of it, put a hand on Choji's shoulder, and asked the three of them with genuine curiosity whether they'd like to do this with him instead. They hadn't. Nobody ever did, and none of them could explain why. Kiba Inuzuka had one about falling out of the tallest tree on the training field and hitting the ground so hard he blacked out, and waking up with every bone intact and Akamaru licking his face, and Naruto crouched next to him saying, "You landed on your neck. Try landing on something else next time, yoi." Shikamaru Nara had one he never told anybody, which was that he had watched Naruto Uzumaki fail a written exam on purpose 3 times and had spent 2 years quietly wondering why. Hinata Hyuga had one she never told anybody either. She had been 6 years old in an alley with a torn coat and 3 Kumo-hired strangers in front of her, and a boy she didn't know had walked into the alley with his hands in his pockets and asked them if they were lost. She had watched one of them put a kunai through his shoulder to the hilt. She had watched him look down at it, sigh, and pull it out himself. She had watched the wound close. Nobody believed her when she was 6. Nobody asked her again after that. So Hinata Hyuga grew up with a secret that had blonde hair, and every year the secret got a little taller and a little steadier and a little more impossible to look directly at, and every year she got a little worse at breathing near it. That's where the story really starts. 12 years old, spring, the academy training field. 1 week before graduation, on the day the Leaf Village found out what was living in it. The academy had booked the field for taijutsu drills, and half the class was there because half the class had figured out that drills meant Iruka would eventually give up and let them spar. Hinata was working forms with Choji near the eastern posts, and she was doing it badly because Naruto Uzumaki was sitting on the fence 40 feet away with a rice ball and no shirt on after his own round. And every time she got her breathing right, her eyes drifted and lost it again. "You're leaning," Choji said around a mouthful of chips. "I'm fine. You're leaning at like a specific person. Choji." "Just an observation, Hinata." The screaming started at the tree line. The first sound was a Chunin's voice going up 2 octaves. The second sound was the eastern perimeter fence, 100 feet of chain link and steel posts, coming out of the ground all at once with a shriek of tearing metal. What came through the gap was the size of a house. It was a summoning bear, and it had been summoned to kill things, and it had been Anbu property until about 90 seconds ago. 12 feet at the shoulder, black fur matted with something that used to be a containment seal. Iron spikes hammered through its shoulder plates and down its spine in rows, each one longer than a child's arm, and one entire eye socket wrapped in a torn suppression tag that flapped as it ran. It hit the field at full gallop, and the ground shook hard enough to knock 2 students off their feet. Irukumino turned and screamed, "Get behind me!" and got exactly that far because bravery is fast and a bear is faster. Mizuki, the second instructor, froze solid. Sakura Haruno screamed. Ino grabbed her. Shikamaru grabbed both of them and started dragging, and the bear picked its target the way animals do, which is to say it picked the smallest thing standing still. And the smallest thing standing still was a Hyuga girl who had locked up completely with her hands still in her clan's opening stance, and a heavy-set boy who had thrown his arms out in front of her without a plan in the world. 40 feet. 30. 20. "Hinata!" Kiba's voice. From somewhere behind, something moved across the field. Hinata's Byakugan wasn't active. She had time to see one thing, a blur of orange and blonde crossing 20 feet of open ground in under half a second, and then a back, a bare-scarred 12-year-old back, planted directly in front of her with both hands sliding into 2 pockets, unhurried, like a man stepping into an elevator. "Naruto." Choji started. The bear's claws came down. They went through Naruto Uzumaki's chest, not across it, through it. 4 blades of keratin the length of kitchen knives entered under his collarbone, tore down at an angle, and came out the other side, and the sound they made was a sound children shouldn't have to know. Blood went up in a fan and painted the training post beside Hinata's shoulder red. A piece of something wet hit the grass at Choji's feet. Naruto's torso had a hole in it, big enough to see daylight through. Hinata's scream tore the field in half. Iruka Umino, 40 feet out with a kunai in his hand, and tears already starting because he had just watched a student die in front of him, would say later that the worst part was how the boy didn't fall down. Naruto stood there. He tilted his head down and looked at the hole in himself the way a man looks at a stain on a shirt he liked. "Aw," he said. The fire came up. It didn't ignite so much as arrive, a column of blue and gold that went from his heels to 20 feet over his head in one beat, so bright that every shadow on the field snapped the other direction. It roared, and where it rolled over the ruin of his chest, the ruin stopped existing. Muscle drew itself closed like a fist. Ribs found each other and locked. Skin sealed from the outside in, and the blood on the grass went to fine gray ash and blew away. And it took 2 seconds. And at the end of the 2 seconds, there was a boy standing there with an unmarked chest and blue flame guttering off his shoulders in the shape of something with wings. Choji Akimichi's chip bag hit the dirt. Hinata stopped screaming mid-breath and simply stared, both hands over her mouth, tears still coming, because her brain had not caught up with her eyes and would need several minutes. The bear reared back for a second swing. Naruto looked up at it. His eyes had gone gold at the rim, and his voice came out level and almost bored, and every person on that field heard it. "I can't let you do that." His arms came apart. That's what it looked like from the ground, as if his forearms and shoulders detonated into a storm of blue feathers, each one edged in gold, each one hissing in the air. The feathers organized. 2 wings snapped open with a crack like a mainsail catching wind, and the wingspan went past 20 feet and blew the training field's dust into a ring. Naruto pushed off, and the ground he pushed off of cratered. He went up. 40 feet, fast enough that the students tracking him lost him and had to find him again against the sun. At the top of the arc he folded, rolled once, and both his legs came apart into the same fire, reforming into the legs of a bird the size of a horse, scaled in gold, ending in 4 black talons apiece that glowed at the tips with chakra packs so dense it looked like liquid glass. He came down. Phoenix brand. The 2-legged kick landed on the top of the bear's skull. The field broke. That's the only honest way to put it. The impact drove 12 feet of summoning bear face first into the earth with the sound of a quarry collapsing. And the dirt did not absorb it. The dirt rejected it, blowing outward in a ring of soil and turf and shredded fence wire that knocked Kiba flat on his back and threw Shikamaru into Ino. A crater 11 feet across opened around the bear's head. Its spikes snapped off at the base and went spinning across the grass like thrown knives. Its whole enormous body bounced once, went slack and stopped. The dust hung there. Naruto stood in the middle of the crater on the back of the bear's neck with blue fire trailing off his wings, and then the wings folded, and then they weren't wings, they were arms, and then his hands went back into his pockets. He walked out of the hole he'd made. Nobody spoke. 28 students, 2 Chunin instructors, and 1 very large, unconscious animal, and the only sound on that field was the wind and Akamaru's confused whining. Naruto crossed the grass to Hinata Hyuga, who was sitting down without remembering having sat down. There was a scrape on her cheek where a piece of flying fence had caught her. Half an inch, barely bleeding. He crouched in front of her, and up close his eyes weren't gold at all. They were blue and warm and a little tired, and he raised one hand and blue fire licked up around his fingers. And Hinata flinched. "It's fine," he said. He touched her cheek. It was cold. That's the thing she would try to explain to her cousin that night and fail at completely. Fire that came off a person in sheets and made the air shimmer, and it went over her skin like cool water off a cup, and the sting under her eye simply left. The scrape closed. There wasn't even a mark. "These flames, they're a bit special," Naruto said. "They don't burn, they heal." Hinata Hyuga made a sound that was half a word. He stood and offered Choji a hand up, and Choji took it with the reverence of a man being knighted. Behind them, 4 Anbu dropped onto the field in a hard triangle formation, with a 5th already on the roof of the shed with a bow drawn. The emergency response squad, arriving 40 seconds late, in time to see a summoning contract worth 6 months of black budget funding lying face down in a crater with its skull driven into the topsoil. The squad captain's mask turned slowly. Bird pattern. Red lines. He looked at the crater. He looked at the bear. He looked at the 12-year-old walking past him with his hands in his pockets, shirtless, spotless, wiping blood that wasn't his own off his forearm with his thumb. "Who did this?" the captain said. Naruto didn't stop walking. "Bear did most of it," he said. "I just helped, Yoi." Iruka Umino sat down in the grass and put his head in his hands and started laughing, which turned into crying, which turned back into laughing. The report reached the Hokage's desk in 19 minutes, which was a village record. Hiruzen Sarutobi read the words regenerated a penetrating thoracic wound in under 3 seconds and transformed both upper limbs into avian appendages of unknown chakra composition, an estimated impact force in excess of an A-rank Earth technique. And then he set the paper down and looked out his window at the academy field for a long, long time. "Get me his file," he said. "Which file, Lord Third?" "All of them, and send Kakashi in." Word about Naruto Uzumaki got out of that training field before the Anbu finished their cleanup, and it never went back in. Not the details. The details got stamped and buried within the hour. But 28 12-year-olds went home to 28 families that night, and by morning the merchants who had spent 7 years shutting doors on a small blonde boy were hearing about the crater from their own children. 2 days later, Naruto walked past the Eastern Market on his way to the academy, and a greengrocer who had turned him away 60 times in his life stepped out from behind her stall, held out a pear, and could not look him in the face. Naruto looked at it. Then he took it and said, "Thanks," and kept walking and ate it, and never once in his life brought it up again. Graduation came and went. He passed the written exam this time, barely, on purpose. He passed the practical by producing 41 shadow clones in a classroom size for 8, which took 11 minutes to clear out, and got Mizuki's coffee knocked over twice. Team assignments got read out on a Thursday morning, and the room was loud, and Iruka's voice cut over it. Team 8, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, Choji Akimichi. Sensei, Kurenai Yuhi. Kiba whooped. Choji offered Hinata chips. Hinata looked across the room at a blonde head that wasn't turned her way and felt something in her chest deflate very slightly and hated herself for it. Team 10, Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, Shino Aburame. Sensei, Asuma Sarutobi. Ino made a sound of profound betrayal. Shikamaru put his head on the desk. Shino said nothing, which Shino would go on to do beautifully for years. Team 7, Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha. The room went still because everybody could count, and Naruto Uzumaki. Sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Sakura Haruno's mouth opened and closed twice, and what came out was, "Wait, both of them." Sasuke Uchiha turned his head and looked, for the first time in 3 years, directly at Naruto. Naruto had his cheek on his fist and his eyes shut, and had been asleep since the second paragraph. Kakashi Hatake was 4 hours late to their first meeting, which he thought was funny, and which stopped being funny when he arrived at training ground. 7, and found Sakura reading a scroll under a tree, Sasuke doing pull-ups on a branch, and Naruto Uzumaki lying on his back in the grass in the middle of a small circle of scorched earth with his head. Sorry, Kakashi said, one hand up. "A cat needed." "Sure," Naruto said, eyes closed. Kakashi paused. The bell test was simple, and Kakashi explained it simply, and he did it while reading a book, because the point of the exercise was to be humiliating enough that 3 children stopped thinking of themselves as 3 children. 2 bells, noon deadline. Whoever comes up empty goes back to the academy. "One more thing," Kakashi said. "Come at me with the intent to kill or you?" He stopped because Naruto had raised a hand. "Question. Yes? Do you want the bells back after, or do we keep them, Yoi?" Sakura made a strangled noise. Kakashi's visible eye curved. "Cheeky. Begin." Sasuke and Sakura vanished into the tree line the way they'd been taught. Naruto stayed exactly where he was, sitting cross-legged in the open with his hands on his knees, and Kakashi's eye narrowed, because that was either the arrogance of a fool or a message. It was a message. Kakashi went for the Uchiha first, on principle. Sasuke had picked good cover, high in an oak with a clear sightline, and he'd already worked out 3 escape routes, and none of that mattered, because a Jonin came up through the branches behind him without moving a single leaf, and Sasuke Uchiha felt a hand close on the back of his collar and understood in that instant exactly how much distance existed between a genin and a real shinobi. Kakashi's heel came around for the base of Sasuke's skull, pulled, obviously. Enough to end a fight, not a life. Blue fire came through the leaves sideways. Naruto got there. Nobody, reviewing it later, could account for how he'd been 90 feet away and on the ground. But he arrived, and instead of blocking, he simply put himself in the space between Kakashi's foot and Sasuke's neck. The kick caught him across the throat. There was a wet, sharp, unmistakable crack. Naruto's head went to an angle heads don't go to. His body went limp in the air for a quarter second. Sasuke half-turned, watched his teammate's neck break 8 inches from his face. Kakashi Hataki's foot was still extended when the blue fire detonated off Naruto's shoulders. Azure sparks blew out through the canopy and lit the whole tree from the inside like a lantern. Vertebrae reseated themselves with a series of clicks. The head came up, and Naruto Uzumaki hung there in the branches, rolling his shoulder like a man working out a bad night's sleep, and looked at his sensei with mild reproach. "You shouldn't sneak up on family, sensei, yoi." Kakashi Hatake dropped out of the tree, landed, took 2 steps back, and reached up to his forehead protector. "Sasuke, move." The Sharingan came out for a bell test, which had never happened before in Kakashi Hatake's career, and would be the detail he was most embarrassed about in the report. What followed was 40 minutes of the strangest fight of his life. The Uchiha boy was skilled, aggressive, and outclassed by a margin of about 15 years. The Haruno girl had the best chakra control Kakashi had seen in a genin in a decade, and absolutely no idea what to do with it. Neither of them was the problem. The problem was that there was a bird in the sky. Naruto never came at him. Not once. He went up, full flight, one long lazy circle at 300 feet with a wingspan that threw a moving shadow over the whole training ground, and he started calling positions. "He's in the reeds by the river, Sakura. 10 o'clock. He's not moving. He's waiting for you to check the tree line." Kakashi swore and relocated. "Behind the stump now. Sasuke, hold. Hold. He wants you to break cover." "Okay. Now go. He's committed." Sasuke went. Kakashi caught him, of course. And a blue comet came out of the sun at a 40-degree angle, and Kakashi had to abandon the hold entirely to avoid being taken off his feet by talons that left 4 gouges in the earth where he'd been standing. "Crane talons!" The slash tore a line through the field 11 feet long and 2 feet deep, and Naruto didn't even follow up. He pulled off, wings beating once, and went back up to altitude. He's not trying to beat me, Kakashi thought, and the thought had a chill on it. He's screening them. He's a wall with a view. So Kakashi tried to take the wall down. He put a kunai through Naruto's thigh at 40 yards. The leg closed before the blood hit the grass. He caught him with a full-body earth technique that buried him to the neck. Naruto came out of the ground as a phoenix, and the ground came with him. He hit him with a lightning-charged palm to the sternum that would have stopped a bull's heart, and Naruto staggered 2 steps, said "Ow!" in a tone of complete disinterest in his own injury, and put a wing across Sakura's front as a shield before she'd even seen the follow-up coming. Fujiazami. The wing came around into a spiral, a churning vortex of blue flame, feathers turning in a tight circle in front of Sakura Haruno's face, and the shuriken volley Kakashi had thrown at her hit it and stopped dead in the air and dropped, all 6, harmless, into the grass. Sakura stared through the fire at the back of Naruto's head. She had spent 3 years thinking of him as the weird quiet one who slept in class. "Are you okay?" she said, which was stupid. She knew it was stupid. "Relax, I've got it, Yoi." Kakashi went for the finish, because pride is a hell of a drug even at 30. He made the seals fast, and he made them where Naruto could see, and he wanted the boy to try to block it. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. The fireball that came out of Kakashi Hatake's mouth was 20 feet across, and it turned the middle of Training Ground 7 into a furnace. It hit Naruto point blank, center mass, at a range of 9 feet. The shockwave flattened the grass in a fan. Sakura was thrown backward off her feet. Sasuke threw both arms up and felt his eyebrows curl. The fire rolled out, black smoke. The tree line on the far side was burning in 3 places. Kakashi stood with his hand still out and waited. Something inside the smoke went whump, then again, slow, rhythmic, the sound of enormous wings. The smoke pulled apart from the center out, and what walked out of it was not a boy. Naruto Uzumaki stood 8 feet tall, and half of him had stopped being human. Great wings of gold-shot blue flame swept back off his shoulders, 25 feet from tip to tip, beating slow. His legs were the legs of a bird of prey, scaled and enormous, and the talons had sunk 4 inches into the scorched dirt and lifted the earth in ridges around them. Flame poured off his back and up into the air in a column of blue that was visible from the market district, from the Hokage Tower, from the academy roof. His face was still his face. That was somehow the worst part. He looked out of that inferno with a boy's face and a boy's half-lidded eyes, and he was not breathing hard. He rolled his neck. "You really thought that would work, Yoi?" On the Hokage Tower balcony, a mile and a half away, Hiruzen Sarutobi lowered his pipe and looked at a blue column of fire on the horizon and murmured, "Oh, Minato, what did your boy find in that forest?" Kakashi Hatake stood in a burning field and did something he had done perhaps 4 times in his adult life. He took stock honestly. Regeneration from lethal trauma in under 3 seconds, apparently unlimited. Full flight at high speed, partial and full transformation, at will, no seals, no cost I can see. Healing of others. I watched him do that in the trees. He closed Sakura's ankle without stopping his own attack run. Physical output at least Jonin. 12 years old, 12. And in 40 minutes, he has taken every hit I've thrown, protected both teammates from every hit I aimed at them, and hasn't once tried to take a bell. Kakashi's shoulders came down. Naruto. The wings stopped. "Why haven't you gone for the bells?" "There's 2, Naruto said. Kakashi waited. 2 bells, 3 of us. The fire off his back guttered down as he let the transformation loosen, feathers burning off into the air like sparks off a struck flint. "You made it so somebody's gotta lose, so nobody's gonna lose, Yoi. They eat or none of us do." Sasuke Uchiha, on the ground with a cut lip and grass in his hair, turned his head sharply. Sakura Haruno's mouth was open. Kakashi Hatake was silent for a full 6 seconds. Then he reached down, unhooked both bells, and threw them underhand into the dirt at Naruto's feet. "Pass," he said. "All 3. "Sensei," Sakura started. "All 3. Kakashi pulled his head back down over the Sharingan, and when he spoke again, there was something rough under it that none of them had heard yet. "In the interest of honesty, I'd like to state that I have failed 7 consecutive Jonin teams over 8 years, and that I came out here today fully intending to make it 8. He looked at the shirtless 12-year-old standing in a crater in a field he had personally set on fire. "I have never been so thoroughly out-taught by a child. Congratulations. Training's at 6 tomorrow. Bring food. Sakura's fainting." "I'm fine." "You're gray." Naruto walked over, crouched, and put a hand on her ankle without asking. Blue fire spread out over her boot, and the sprain she'd been hiding for 20 minutes went away. And Sakura Haruno looked at the top of his head and felt an emotion she had absolutely no filing system for. "Better?" "Yeah." "Cool." He stood, hands into pockets. "Sasuke," lip. Sasuke turned his face away. "It's nothing." "Okay, Yoi." And Naruto walked off toward the village without another word, and Sasuke Uchiha sat in the grass and touched his own split lip and felt his jaw tighten with something that wasn't anger yet, but had all the ingredients. That night, Kakashi Hatake filed a 2-page report and requested a private audience, and Hiruzen Sarutobi listened to the whole thing with his eyes shut and his hands folded on his desk. "Recommendation," the Hokage said at the end. "Immediate reclassification. Whatever he is, D ranks are an insult and a waste. And Lord Third." Kakashi hesitated, which he never did. "I need to say this plainly. If Naruto Uzumaki ever decided he disliked this village, I do not know who we would send." Hiruzen was silent a while. "Then it's fortunate," he said, "that the boy has decided to love it instead, despite our very best efforts. He shouldn't have." "No," the third Hokage agreed. "He shouldn't have." The reclassification came 8 days later in the form of a scroll and a coastline. The Land of Tea had a shipping problem. 40 merchant vessels of the Wasabi Trading Consortium needed to move 800 tons of cargo up the western sea lane to Degarashi Port before the monsoon closed the route. And for 2 seasons running, that lane had been hunting ground for a rogue Kirigakure outfit that had figured out the single most profitable thing a shinobi can do with water release and a warship. They didn't board ships. They didn't demand ransom. They sank ships, then salvaged them at their leisure off the seabed, and they left crews in the water on purpose because drowned witnesses filed no reports. The consortium had hired 4 separate teams. 3 had come back short-handed. 1 hadn't come back. C rank, Kakashi read aloud, deadpan on the deck of the Wasabi Maru with the coast going green and small behind them. Escort and deter. That's a lie, Sakura said. That's a fascinating lie, Kakashi agreed. Sasuke forward mast. Sakura, with the captain. You're our seals and signals. Naruto. Naruto was already up on the bow rail, standing on it, in an 8-foot swell, with his hands in his pockets and his sandals hooked over the wood, watching the horizon like a man waiting for a bus. Naruto's fine, Kakashi finished. They came on the 4th morning, out of a squall. 11 vessels. Ironclad hulls, low in the water, and each one carrying a bow-mounted array the Kiri deserters had built themselves. A ring of 8 nozzles fed by 4 water users chained to a chakra conduit, capable of throwing a lance of pressurized ocean hard enough to punch through a hull below the waterline. They opened at 900 yards, and the first 3 merchant ships in the convoy line came apart before anyone on the Wasabi Maru had finished ringing the alarm bell. It was fast. That's what nobody expects. A ship doesn't sink slowly when something opens it up. It folds, and the sea takes it in under a minute, and the sound is people. Move, the captain was screaming. Hard to port, hard. A water lance took the Wasabi Maru's mainmast off at chest height. Sasuke went into the rail. Sakura went down flat and rolled with a rope tangled around her leg. 2 crewmen went overboard, and one of them didn't come up. The second lance opened the Wasabi Maru's port side. She started listing in 11 seconds. Cargo shifted below with a boom like a landslide. Somewhere under the deck, 40 barrels went through a bulkhead and took 2 men with them. Kakashi was on his feet with a hand already forming seals. Naruto, get Sakura clear and... Naruto was walking to the edge of the deck. He looked out at it. Really looked. The 3 burning hulls behind them. The heads bobbing in the water between the wreckage, some of them swimming, some of them just floating. The 11 iron ships coming on in a wedge with their nozzle rings glowing blue-white as the water users spun up for the next volley. The rain coming down sideways. Lightning in the clouds above, he sighed through his nose. What a pain. Then Naruto Uzumaki stepped off the rail and did not fall. The fire came out of him and kept coming. It went up and out in a rush that blew the rain back 100 feet in every direction and turned the underside of the storm clouds blue. And inside it, something built itself. Wings first, and the wings were 60 feet each. Then the body, and the body was bigger than the deck he'd been standing on. Then a long throat, a crested head, a tail of streaming blue and gold flame that trailed 40 feet behind it and hissed against the rain, and every plume of it burning that same impossible cold blue. The phoenix screamed. It was a sound that went through the hull, through the water, through the chests of every human being for 2 miles. On the lead Kiri warship, a Jonin with 14 years of service dropped his own kunai on his own foot. Sakura Haruno lay tangled on a sinking deck in the rain and looked straight up into the belly of a god and forgot the rope on her leg entirely. That's, the captain said. That's Uzumaki? That's the blonde kid? Yes, Kakashi said. He hadn't raised his voice. His Sharingan was already uncovered and already spinning. Everybody hold on to something. The Phoenix didn't attack. That's what broke people's brains about it afterward. It had 11 armed warships in front of it, and it turned its back on them, banked hard over the wreckage of the convoy, and dropped to 30 feet above the water with its wings spread wide over the drowning. Phoenix Pyreapple! The wings swept forward and blue fire came off them in a curtain. Not a beam, not a blast. A gentle falling rain of it, sheeting down across a quarter mile of burning ocean. It landed on people. A sailor from the Iwaki Maru with a snapped femur and a lungful of seawater felt cold fire wash over him and felt his own legs straighten. A cook with 3rd-degree burns down his whole left side watched the burns go away in front of his eyes while he was still screaming about them. A cabin boy who had been under the surface for 90 seconds and had stopped struggling coughed his lungs clear and started swimming. 41 men in the water. The Phoenix crossed them twice, and at the end of it, 41 men were alive, and 11 of them were sobbing and one of them was praying to a bird. Then it turned around. The Kiri wedge fired everything they had. 11 ships, 88 nozzles, water lances the thickness of tree trunks, and they'd also loaded the harpoon batteries, and the harpoons were iron, barbed, chained, and 4 feet long. The volley hit the Phoenix full on. Steel went through its left wing in 3 places, and the chain snapped taut. A harpoon punched clean through its chest and out the other side, trailing a spray of blue fire. 2 water lances hit it broadside, hard enough that the sound knocked a man off the Wasabi Maru's crow's nest. The Phoenix did not slow down. It flew through it. The holes in the wings sealed while the harpoon shafts were still spinning away. The wound through its chest closed around the chain and snapped it. It came through the volley trailing broken steel and burning water, and its wing beat picked up, and on the lead warship a man with a chakra conduit in both hands screamed, "Reload! Reload! Reload! Rel!" The talons closed on the mainmast. 60 tons of ironclad Kiri warship came out of the water. The hull broke the surface with a sucking roar, streaming ocean out of every scupper, and the Phoenix climbed, wings hammering, dragging the entire vessel up into the storm at a slant, with its crew still on board, screaming, sliding off the deck, grabbing rigging. It got 400 feet up. Then it turned, aimed, and threw. The warship hit the cliffside of a rock island 2,000 feet away. The impact was apocalyptic. Stone the size of houses came off the cliff face and went into the sea. The hull split in half lengthwise, and both halves exploded into a cloud of iron plate and shattered timber and rigging and ocean spray that went a quarter mile in every direction. A wave came off the base of that cliff and rolled outward and rocked all 10 remaining ships hard on their beams. The boom reached the Wasabi Maru 3 seconds later and made everybody's ears ring. On the deck, the captain of the Wasabi Maru sat down. "Kakashi-san," he said thinly. "Is he ours?" "He's the Leaf's," Kakashi said. "I want to renegotiate my contract." The Phoenix came down. It landed on the bow of the listing Wasabi Maru, and the fire pulled inward, condensing, shrinking, folding down and down until a 12-year-old boy in a scorched orange jacket stood on the rail with rain running off his hair and his hands going back into his pockets. He looked out at 9 remaining warships, 400 remaining mercenaries, and the wreckage of the 10th burning against a cliff. Every nozzle on every ship had gone quiet. "If you want to fight, I'll be your opponent," Naruto called out across the water, and his voice carried the way flat, level voices carry over water, but leave the civilians out of it. Silence, rain on iron, rain on canvas. 400 grown men, most of them killers by trade, several of them former Kirigakure Jonin who had once stood in a graduation ring and killed their own classmates to earn a headband, and not one of them said a single word. Behind Naruto on the deck, 30-odd merchant sailors stood in the same silence. Ordinary men, men whose day job was rope and cargo manifests, who had woken up that morning expecting to die, who had watched a child turn into a mountain-sized bird, heal every wounded man in the convoy, take 88 harpoons without flinching, and throw an armored warship into a cliff like a boy skipping a rock, and who were now watching him politely offer a fight to whoever felt like it. One of the sailors, the cook whose burns had gone away, dropped to his knees on the wet planking. "Hey," Naruto said, glancing back, alarmed for the first time all morning. "Hey, don't do that, Yoi. Get up. That's weird." The lead Kiri commander, to his credit, tried. He was a big man named Aoi Rokusho, and he had once stolen a lightning blade from the Leaf, and he came out of his flagship's cabin with that blade crackling in his fist and made the mistake that men like him always make, which is to assume that a demonstration is a bluff. "Lightning style. Thunder Fang." He came across the water. He was fast. He was genuinely fast, and the blade in his hand was a legitimate national treasure. And he crossed 600 yards in 9 seconds and put every jewel he had into a single overhand strike at the boy's skull. Naruto took his right hand out of his pocket. He extended 2 fingers. A swirl of feathers spun into being in front of them, tightening, compressing, blue fire winding into itself into a sphere the size of a fist that shone like a small star. Bluebird. The thrust took Aoi Rokusho in the sternum. It went off like a cannon at the muzzle. Aoi's ribcage caved, his feet left the water, and the concussive wave threw him backwards 600 yards, over his own fleet, past his own flagship, and into the sea 200 feet beyond it. The lightning blade tumbled end over end through the rain and stuck point down in the deck of his own ship. Naruto's hand went back in his pocket. Anybody else, Yoi? They ran. 9 warships turned and ran, and 2 of them collided doing it. And the Leaf received a formal apology from 3 separate Kiri deserter cells within the month, and the western sea lane of the Land of Tea stayed open for 11 straight years afterward. Naruto spent the rest of that afternoon in the water, in phoenix form, with the Wasabi Maru's broken keel held up on his back while the ship's carpenters worked, and Sakura Haruno sat cross-legged on his shoulder blades holding an umbrella over the foreman. "Naruto," she said at one point, the great head turned a fraction. Is this heavy?" A pause. "It's a boat, Yoi." "That's not an answer." Kakashi Hatake stood on the tilted deck with rain sluicing off his headband and wrote nothing down because he had stopped taking notes about halfway through and had started simply watching, the way you watch weather. Sasuke Uchiha stood at the far end of the deck by himself with his hands on the rail and looked out at the cliff 2,000 feet away, where half a warship was still burning against the rock, and he stood there a long time. He was thinking about a man with red eyes in a hallway full of bodies. He was thinking, he could do it. He could actually do it. That thing on my team could walk into a room with Itachi and just end it. And underneath that, in a place he wasn't ready to look at, quieter and much colder. And what does that make me? They came home to a village that had heard the story before the ship docked, and to an old man in a white hat who had a scroll on his desk marked with the seal of the Chunin selection examinations. Kakashi looked at it. "You want to enter them?" "I want the world to see them," Hiruzen said. "Suna is restless. Kiri is unstable. Iwa has been probing our northern border for 2 years. The single cheapest defense a village can buy is a reputation. And Naruto is a reputation. Naruto, said the third Hokage, is a deterrent. And I dislike using a child that way, so I intend to be honest with him about it." He was. That's the part that mattered to Naruto later. The old man sat him down and told him exactly what he wanted and exactly why, and asked instead of ordering, and Naruto Uzumaki listened with his chin on his fist and then shrugged. "Sure, Yoi. That's it. You want people to look at Konoha and think don't." Naruto stood up and stretched. "I'm good at making people think don't." The first stage of the exams was written, and Naruto slept through most of it and got a 72, which Sakura found personally offensive. The second stage was the Forest of Death, which was, for Naruto, a homecoming. They went in at dawn on the third day with a heaven scroll and a plan, and the plan lasted about 6 hours, at which point Team 7 walked into a clearing and the air changed. It came down like weather. A pressure, thick and greasy, that got into the throat and behind the eyes, and Sakura Haruno's knees locked up so hard she couldn't fall down. Sasuke's hand froze halfway to his kunai pouch. His pupils blew wide. His breathing went shallow and fast and stopped being breathing. Killing intent. Real killing intent from something that had killed enough people to have gotten good at it. Sasuke saw himself die 6 different ways in his own head, in perfect detail, and his body simply quit. The voice came from everywhere. The Uchiha, and the and you. Naruto stepped forward. He put himself in front of both of them and let the killing intent break over him like surf over a piling. He felt it. He didn't care about it. His arms were already coming apart into wings. "Hey," he said, "you can come out, Yoi." Orochimaru of the Sannin stepped out of a tree trunk the way a man steps out of a doorway. He was wearing a stolen face and a Genin's vest, and both of them were sloughing off, and underneath was pale skin and gold-slit eyes, and a smile that had been designed in a laboratory. "So you are the Phoenix child," he breathed. "Do you know how much time I've spent in my life on the problem of not dying? Decades. Human experimentation, body theft, seals that would make Kushina Uzumaki weep." His tongue came out long and wet and tasted the air, and a sewer rat trips into it. The universe has such a sense of humor. "You're talking a lot," Naruto said. "I'm appreciating." Then he moved, and Orochimaru at speed was a different order of thing entirely. He wasn't fast like Kakashi was fast. He was fast the way a snake is fast, which is to say the movement contained no wind up at all. He went past Naruto's left wing. Naruto turned to intercept, got a hand on his coat, actually got a fistful of it, and Orochimaru's neck came out of his collar like rope off a spool. 6 feet, 9, 12. It arced around Naruto's shoulder in a curve no body should be able to make, and the jaw opened, and the fangs went into Sasuke Uchiha's shoulder. Sasuke screamed. 3 black marks bloomed on his skin and became a spreading web, ink under the surface, crawling up the side of his neck and down his chest like a crack running through glass. Naruto tore the coat in half, put a talon through the retracting neck, and Orochimaru laughed as the wound sealed itself. Too late, Phoenix. That mark is mine now. In 3 days, he'll come crawling to me on his own. Sasuke went down on his knees, his fingers dug at his own shoulder, foam at the corner of his mouth. The web of ink was at his jawline. Sasuke! Sakura was crawling toward him, still half paralyzed. Sasuke, what is it? What's... Naruto crossed the clearing. He dropped to one knee beside his teammate, and something in his face changed. It wasn't rage. It never was with him. The warmth that usually sat behind his eyes compressed instead, packed down tight into something with edges, and when he looked up at the Sannin, Orochimaru of the Sannin, who had faced down the third Hokage, who had murdered dozens of his own colleagues, who had never in 20 years met an expression that concerned him, felt his smile falter 1 millimeter. You touch my brother. You deal with me, Yoi. Naruto put his hand flat over the bite, and he opened everything he had straight into it. The blue fire went off like a magnesium flare. It went in through Sasuke's skin, and it found the seal, and the two of them met. The curse mark fought. That's the thing that got written down afterward in a sealed report that 6 people were cleared to read. It fought. Corrupted senjutsu, refined by Orochimaru over 11 years and 43 test subjects, was designed to root itself into the nervous system and rewrite a human being from the inside, and it had never once failed to do that. It sank into Sasuke Uchiha's chakra network and clamped down and pulled, and blue phoenix flame poured in on top of it and pulled the other way, and the two forces went to war over 8 cubic inches of a 12-year-old boy's shoulder. Sasuke's back arched off the ground. He shrieked. Every vein in his neck stood up. Black ink flowed up over his cheek toward his eye, and Naruto leaned his weight into his hand and said, "Lo, nope." The blue went through it. The ink stopped. Then it went gray. Then it began to steam, hissing off Sasuke's skin in threads of black vapor that came apart in the air and left nothing behind, and it retreated. Down his cheek, down his neck, back across his collarbone, shrinking, contracting, screaming in a register below hearing as it went, until the last 3 marks pulled into a single point and burned out like a wet match. Sasuke's skin was clean. Naruto let go and sat back on his heels. The clearing was silent for 4 seconds. Orochimaru stood 20 feet away and did not move at all. His mouth was slightly open. One hand had come up halfway, seemingly on its own, as though to point at something, and had stopped. His pupils were enormous. His breath came in through his teeth in a thin whistle. He had watched it happen. He had watched with the sharpest analytical mind of his generation, the entire process, and he had understood every step. In understanding it was the horror. It isn't overpowering the seal. It isn't sealing over it. It's cleaning it. It's treating the mark as a wound. My greatest work, 11 years. It looked at 11 years of my life, and it categorized it as damage, and it removed it, which means it would do the same to my body transfer technique, which means it would do the same to Edo Tensei, which means Orochimaru of the Sannin, who had built his entire life on a single principle, took 1 step backward before he could stop himself, which means that child is the only thing in the world that can make me mortal. Naruto Uzumaki stood up. He didn't say anything. He didn't monologue. He rolled his ankle once, and blue fire ran down his right leg and packed itself along the shin and heel in a layer so dense it looked like poured glass, chakra-hardened, feathers folding flat into armor. Then he was in the air. Orochimaru's Sharingan-trained reflexes fired. He got a substitution seal half-formed. Half was insufficient. The kick landed on the point of his jaw. His jaw came apart, not broke, came apart, the mandible splitting at the joint and the whole left side of his face folding in, teeth going through his cheek, and the impact lifted the Sannin off his feet and drove him backward through 2 trees. The first tree exploded. The second one caught him and bent and dumped him in the leaf litter 40 feet on. He came up on one hand, spitting a mouthful of his own teeth in something white and jointed, and for one instant, in the shadow of the trees, Orochimaru looked exactly like what he was, a wet, frightened, pale thing on the ground. "Kabuto," he hissed through the ruin of his mouth. "Kabuto, now!" He melted into the earth. Naruto stood in the clearing with steam coming off his heel and waited to see if he came back. He didn't. "Sasuke?" Sakura's voice thin. She had gotten her arms working and had Sasuke's head in her lap. Naruto knelt, put a hand on Sasuke's chest, and let a slow trickle of flame in, the gentle kind, the kind he used on scraped knees. Sasuke's breathing evened out. The gray drained out of his face. His eyelids fluttered. He woke up looking at the canopy, then at Naruto. Sasuke Uchiha sat up fast, hand flying to his shoulder. His fingers found smooth skin. He pressed. Nothing. He pulled his collar down and looked, and there was nothing there. No marks, no scar, no swelling, nothing but a 12-year-old boy's unremarkable shoulder. "It's gone," he said. "Yeah." "He put something in me." Sasuke's voice was climbing. I felt it taking. "It's gone," Naruto said again. And Sasuke Uchiha looked at his teammate crouched in front of him in the leaf litter with dirt on his knees and his hands loose, and that same tired, half-lidded expression, and something enormous and complicated broke open in his chest, and what came out of it was gratitude, real and hot and total, and right behind the gratitude, riding on it like a parasite, came the thing that would take 4 months to kill him. He saved me. Again. I've done nothing. In 8 years of training every day until my hands bled, I have done nothing, and he saves me, and it costs him nothing, and he doesn't even want to thank you. My brother killed my entire family, and this idiot could kill my brother by accident. Thank you, Sasuke said. It came out flat and strange. Don't worry about it, Yoi. I said thank you. I heard you. Naruto stood and offered a hand. Come on, we still need an earth scroll. Sasuke looked at the hand for 1 second too long. Then he took it. They took an earth scroll off a Kumo team 40 minutes later, and the way they took it became the first Naruto Uzumaki story to circulate outside the Land of Fire. Because Naruto walked into their camp alone with his hands in his pockets, said, "Hey, scroll!" And when their heavy hit him with a full-power lightning-wrapped axe kick that took his head clean off his shoulders, he caught his own head, put it back on, and said, "So, scroll." And 3 Kumo Genin gave him the scroll and their rations and one of their tents. Team 7 cleared the second stage in 11 hours, which was the fastest time recorded in 30 years. The preliminaries got cut to 4 matches because the proctors wanted to move things along, and Naruto's was the second. His opponent was Zaku Abumi of the Sound, who had air cannons surgically implanted in both forearms, and we will simply say installed because that is what they were, and who pointed both of them at Naruto and let go with everything. The blast took the arena wall out behind Naruto and put a hole in the observation gallery. Naruto walked out of the dust with his hands in his pockets and both shoulders on fire. "Cool arms," he said. Then he was in front of Zaku, and there was no travel time that anyone in the stands could resolve, and he flicked Zaku Abumi in the forehead with one finger. Zaku Abumi went into the far wall, through it, and was found unconscious in a maintenance corridor 40 feet on the other side. "Winner," said the proctor after a long pause, "Naruto Uzumaki." In the gallery, Kiba Inuzuka said, "He flicked him," with the outrage of a man personally robbed. Choji, chewing, "Yeah, he flicked him." "Hinata, tell him that's insane." Hinata Hyuga had her Byakugan active and had been staring at the same spot on the arena floor for 30 seconds. She had been watching Naruto's chakra network the entire fight, and she was going to need a very long time to explain to anyone what she had seen there, because his chakra system was normal, healthy, enormous, and threaded all the way through it, in every pathway, in his bones, was a second thing that her clan's eyes had no vocabulary for. Something blue that didn't flow. It burned in place in a shape like a bird with its wings up around his heart. "Hinata? It's beautiful," she said. Kiba squinted at her. "It's a forehead flick." The month between the preliminaries and the finals is where Naruto Uzumaki met Jiraiya of the Sannin, who was watching a hot spring at the time, and who was in the water 11 seconds later with a broken nose after Naruto put a hand on his shoulder, asked what he was doing, and then answered his own question. They got along famously after that. "Kid," Jiraiya said on the third day, sitting on a rock while a blue phoenix the size of a barn turned lazy circles over the training field. "You understand you're a walking international incident." There are men in this world, men whose names I won't say out loud, who collect things like you. They can come get me, Yoi. That is exactly the attitude that will get everyone you love killed. The phoenix stopped circling. It landed. The fire folded. Naruto stood on the grass with his hands out of his pockets for once, and he looked at the Sannin with an expression that made Jiraiya's mouth go dry. "Then I'll be standing in front of them," Naruto said. "That's what I'm for." Jiraiya taught him the Rasengan in 9 days, which was a record, and mostly because Naruto solved the third step by wrapping the sphere in phoenix fire, and then spent an afternoon apologizing to a hillside. The finals never got past the first match. It was Sasuke against Neji Hyuga, and it was a genuinely excellent fight, and it was in its 14th minute when 4 things happened in the same 6 seconds. A genjutsu rolled out over the stadium and put 9,000 civilians to sleep. 300 Sunagakure shinobi came over the north wall. 2 enormous snakes came through the south wall, taking 200 feet of it with them. And on the roof of the Kage box, 4 sound jonin landed at the corners of a square, threw their arms out, and a wall of purple fire went up into the sky. 4 violet flames formation, the dome sealed. 200 feet on a side, edge to edge, roaring purple, and inside it stood the third Hokage, and Orochimaru with his face rebuilt and his jaw wired, and 2 coffins rising out of the roof tiles. Konoha started burning within 90 seconds. The Genin were sent out, pursuit teams, evacuation teams, a fast squad chasing a red-headed Suna boy into the forest with a tanuki growing out of his shoulder. Kakashi Hatake was on the north wall with 140 enemies in front of him. Guy was at the gate. Kurenai was moving civilians. Asuma was on a snake. Naruto Uzumaki stood on the stadium roof in the middle of all of it and looked at the purple dome on the Hokage monument. He watched the barrier for 3 full seconds. Long enough to see it flex as something inside hit it. Long enough to see the shape of an old man moving in there, small and fast and getting slower. He took his hands out of his pockets. "You think you can just take the king's head so easily?" Then Naruto Uzumaki lit the sky up. He went off the roof and became a blue comet, 60 feet of wingspan burning gold at the trailing edge, and every single person on both sides of the invasion looked up because you couldn't have done anything else. Suna Shinobi mid-charge stopped charging. A Konoha Chunin who was about to die on a spear point watched his killer's head turn to follow the light. On the north wall, Kakashi Hatake's Sharingan tracked a streak of blue across the whole sky of his village, and he laughed once, harsh into his own hand. "Of course," he said, "of course." Naruto hit the barrier at full speed. The 4 violet flames formation was designed to hold a Kage. It was a wall built to be one way and absolute, and it did the thing it was built to do. The purple fire caught him and began to consume him, and it consumed him thoroughly. His feathers charred. His left wing burned through to bone. The skin came off his shoulders. The flame ate his face, and the blue fire put all of it back. In the same instant, forever, the 2 fires met at the surface of the barrier and screamed against each other. Destruction and resurrection, running the same cycle 1,000 times a second. Burn, heal, and the boy in the middle of it pushed. At the northeast corner, a sound jonin named Jirobo felt his arms start to shake. He's inside the field," the woman at the northwest corner said. "That's impossible. It incinerates." "I is incinerating him," Jirobo bellowed. "It's just not working. Hold. The barrier bulged inward. Then it tore. A hole the size of a door opened in the 4 violet flames formation, and the 4 sound jonin holding it were thrown flat off their feet, and one of them lost a hand. Naruto Uzumaki came through the gap in a wave of blue fire and landed on the roof of the Hokage monument between an exhausted old man and a Sannin. The fire pulled off him. He straightened up and put his hands in his pockets. Behind him, Hiruzen Sarutobi was on one knee. His hat was gone. He'd lost blood from a wound in his side, and his robes were burned across the chest, and he had, 30 seconds ago, begun the seals for the dead demon consuming seal, because he had understood the situation on this roof perfectly and had made his peace with it. He looked up. At his front and right stood the reanimated corpse of Hashirama Senju. At his left, Tobirama Senju, black cracks in a gray face, red eyes with a strip of paper visible at the base of the skull. And in front of him, between him and Orochimaru, stood a 12-year-old boy with a stray blue feather burning off his shoulder. "Sorry I'm late, old man," Naruto said. "Traffic, yoi." Hiruzen Sarutobi made a sound that was neither a laugh nor a sob. Orochimaru's remade face twisted. "A genin?" The word came out shrill. "You think you can change this?" Naruto looked at him. He didn't answer. He moved. Tobirama Senju was the fastest man of his generation, dead or alive, and he had a kunai at Naruto's kidney before Naruto's second step landed. It went into the hilt. Naruto kept going. His right arm came apart into a wing and slammed the second Hokage across the roof by the chest, and his left came around and grabbed the kunai out of his own back and dropped it, and the hole closed. Hashirama Senju made one seal. Wood style, deep forest emergence. The entire Hokage monument grew a forest. It came out of the roof tiles and the stone and the air itself. Trunks 40 feet thick punching upward, branches spreading in a canopy that filled the whole inside of the barrier in under 2 seconds. An entire ancient woodland unfolding at speed. Roots the size of horses tore the roof apart. Orochimaru leapt clear, laughing. Hiruzen threw himself behind a chimney stack as a branch came the space he'd occupied. Naruto went up into it. He flew through the growing forest, through it, between trunks that were still growing, banking hard, wings brushing bark, and he trailed blue fire behind him, and he didn't burn the wood down. "Fujiazami!" The flame came off him in a spiral and rolled outward through the canopy in a wave, and where it touched, the wood technique changed. It stopped being a weapon. The blue fire went over Hashirama's living wood and treated the reanimation chakra inside it as exactly what Naruto's flames always treated foreign corruption as, an infection. Branches that had been arcing toward Hiruzen's chest went slack and slowed and curled up. The bark went from gray-black to living brown. Buds opened. On the north face of the monument, 100 flowers came out on a branch that had been about to impale the third Hokage of the leaf. Inside the dome, Hashirama Senju's reanimated body stopped moving. His head tilted. The red faded out of his eyes for 1 full second, and Hiruzen Sarutobi, flat on his back behind a chimney, 30 feet away, swore afterward that his teacher looked at the boy in the air and smiled. Then the red came back, and the corpse charged again. Naruto came out of the canopy in a dive and hit Tobirama Senju. Phoenix Brand! Both talons drove the second Hokage down through the roof, through the attic floor beneath it, and pinned him into the stone of the monument's upper gallery with a crash that dropped roof tiles across half the district. Naruto put his weight on it. Blue fire poured down his legs into the corpse. It found the formula. Edo Tensei is a seal written into a body. The blue fire spread out over Tobirama Senju's chest and down his arms and up his throat, and the black lines of the reanimation script began to glow, then whiten, then peel. Tobirama's mouth opened. "You," the second Hokage said in a voice like a rock slide, and it was hard to tell whether it was a threat or something else entirely. The corpse's left arm crumbled to ash from the shoulder down. "Hokage-sama!" Orochimaru shrieked, and it was the first time in his adult life that his voice had gone completely out of his hands. Hashirama, the boy, killed the boy, and Hiruzen Sarutobi, 70 years old, on his knees on a broken roof with his side split open, watched Orochimaru's attention leave him entirely. He had spent 40 years teaching. He had recognized an opening in his sleep for 4 decades. The old man came up off the tiles like a man half his age. Fire style. Dragon flame bomb. The stream took Orochimaru across the shoulders and turned him around, and Hiruzen was already inside his guard, and the seals were flying, and it was sealing technique, sealing of the 4 symbols, arms only, hands only, the version that costs you your enemy's weapons instead of your own soul. Hiruzen's palms slammed onto Orochimaru's forearms. The Sannin screamed. It wasn't a dignified sound. His arms went black from the elbow down and stayed that way, the chakra pathways in them sealed shut, dead meat hanging off working shoulders. and the man who had made himself a god of not dying stood in a burning forest inside his own barrier and screamed like a child with his hand on a stove. My arms, my arms. You should have stayed away, Hiruzen said, breathing hard, and he had never in his life sounded so old or so certain. You should have stayed very far away from my village, Orochimaru. The Sound Four dropped the barrier and pulled their master out through the trees. Hashirama Senju's reanimation fell apart on the roof, and the last thing it did was turn its head toward the sky. Naruto Uzumaki landed on a branch that hadn't existed 4 minutes ago. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at him. The old man was crying. He was doing it without any noise and without any shame, standing in the wreckage of the Hokage Monument's roof in a forest that had grown out of it, and he had walked onto this rooftop expecting the last thing he ever saw to be his student's face. Naruto, he said, you're bleeding, Yoi. Hold still. The boy pressed a hand to the old man's side, and blue fire ran out over him, and the wound in Hiruzen Sarutobi's ribs closed, and 40 years of scar tissue in his left shoulder, from a war nobody alive but him remembered, closed too. Above them, on the surrounding rooftops, in the trees, on the water tower, 31 members of Anbu Black Ops had arrived in the last 90 seconds and had all stopped in exactly the same place, because they had all seen exactly the same thing, and every one of them was thinking the same 3 words. That's the future. Cat Mask, second squad, took her hand off her sword. Captain, she said, the village is going to want an explanation. The village, said the Anbu captain, watching a 12-year-old fuss over an old man's shoulder, is going to want to apologize. Konoha lost 800 people in the invasion. It should have lost 4,000, and it should have lost its Hokage, and the fact that it did neither is why the Leaf Village's calendar has a holiday on it in autumn that nobody in the Land of Fire can explain to foreigners without sounding insane. Hiruzen Sarutobi kept his job. Tsunagakure sued for peace in 6 days, and Orochimaru of the Sannin went to ground in a bunker under a mountain in the land of rice with 2 dead arms and a fear he had never carried before, and told Kabuto Yakushi in a voice with a shake in it to bring him the Uchiha boy at any cost, on any timeline, because I need eyes that can see that fire coming, he said. Because there is a child in the leaf who can take my immortality away from me, and I intend to be very hard to find until I understand him. The offer went to Sasuke Uchiha 11 weeks later, and it found him at the worst possible moment, which was the whole point. Here is what those 11 weeks looked like from inside Sasuke Uchiha's head. He made Chunin. So did Naruto. Naruto's promotion came with a personal commendation from the Hokage, a mission record with 2 A ranks on it, and an entry in the Kirigakure bingo book that read Uzumaki Naruto. Do not engage. Flee on sight. All ranks. Sasuke trained 9 hours a day. He unlocked his second Sharingan Tomoe. He learned the Chidori from Kakashi, who taught him, because he was worried about exactly this and thought a bond might hold better than a leash. Then Itachi Uchiha came to Konoha looking for the Nine Tails, with a man in a bamboo hat beside him, and Sasuke Uchiha found his brother in a hotel corridor and threw everything he had ever learned at him, and was on the floor in 9 seconds with a broken wrist and his own eyes forced open. And then Naruto Uzumaki walked into the corridor with his hands in his pockets. Sasuke had to watch it from the floor. He got to watch all of it. He got to watch Itachi's Tsukuyomi go into Naruto's eyes and come back out with nothing. Because the flames burned genjutsu out of a nervous system, the way they burned everything else out of a nervous system. He got to watch Kasame Hoshigaki's sword eat 200 pounds of chakra and then get taken away from him by a hand that closed on the wrapped blade like a mother taking scissors from a toddler. He got to watch his brother, the ghost he had organized his entire soul around killing, go through a wall. He got to watch Itachi Uchiha look at Naruto for one long moment with something almost like relief on his face and say, "So it's you," and leave. And he got to lie on the floor of that corridor with a broken wrist while Naruto crouched down and healed it and said, "You okay, Yoi?" That's what did it, not the loss, the kindness afterward. "Don't," Sasuke said. "Don't what?" "Don't touch me." He wrenched his hand back. His voice cracked in the middle. "Do you understand what you just did? Do you have any idea what you just took from me? Naruto looked at him for a while. He was gonna kill you, Sasuke. He was mine! And Sasuke Uchiha sat on the hotel carpet and screamed at the only person who had ever stood between him and the world. And Naruto Uzumaki knelt there and took it, because taking things was the only skill he'd ever fully mastered. Sasuke left the village 19 days later. He went out over the north wall at 2 a.m. with 4 sound shinobi as an escort and a jar in his pack that Kabuto Yakushi had told him would make him something else. Shikamaru took a squad after him. Kiba, Choji, Neji, Lee, and all 5 of them fought hard, and all 5 of them went down. And that is exactly as much as they were ever going to be able to do. Naruto was 3 days out on a mission in the land of rivers when the bird found him. He came home over the treetops as a comet and didn't stop at the village. He found the retrieval squad first, because that was Naruto. Shikamaru with a broken hand, Kiba with a hole through his abdomen, Choji at the far end of a fight with an Akimichi pill in his system and his heart running at 4 times its rated speed, Neji with 8 puncture wounds, Lee with both arms fractured. He landed in the middle of them and spread his wings. Phoenix Pyreapple! Blue fire came down over 5 broken teenagers in a clearing, and Choji Akimichi's heart slowed to a normal rhythm, and Kiba Inuzuka's intestines sealed shut, and Neji Hyuga's 8 holes closed, and Rock Lee sat up and looked at his own healed arms and burst into tears on the spot. Naruto, Shikamaru grabbed his sleeve. Valley of the End. He's got maybe a 20-minute lead. Naruto, he's gone, man, he's not. I know, Yoi. Then what are you? I'm gonna go get him anyway. The Valley of the End is a canyon with a waterfall in it and 200-foot statues facing each other across the water. And it has always been the place where this village goes to have its worst arguments. Sasuke Uchiha stood on the head of Madara Uchiha with the rain starting. Naruto landed on Hashirama's. Nobody said anything for a while. The falls made a lot of noise. You came, Sasuke said finally. Yeah, why? Naruto stepped off the statue and dropped 100 feet and landed on the surface of the water, standing, easy, hands out of his pockets for once. Because you left without saying bye, Yoi. That's rude. Sasuke came down too. He landed 40 feet away on the churning water and the rain came down harder, and it plastered his hair to his forehead, and his eyes were red and spinning. There's nothing here for me. There's me. Naruto's voice didn't rise. It never did. There's Sakura, who has cried every day for 2 weeks and would kill me for telling you. There's Kakashi, who taught you a technique he invented because he was scared you'd feel alone. There's a village that's yours. A pause. You don't have to carry this alone, Sasuke. You have a family now, Yoi. And Sasuke Uchiha's face came apart. That was the thing nobody expected, if they'd been there to see it. He didn't sneer. His mouth twisted and his eyes went hot and wet. And for 1 second, the boy who had sat in a corridor with a broken wrist was standing right there on the water. Then he closed it. All of it. Like a hand closing. Your family makes me weak, Naruto. I need to be a monster to kill a monster. That's the dumbest thing you've ever said. You don't understand. Sasuke's shoulders came up. You've never had anything to lose, so you've never had anything to be afraid of. You stand there, you stand in front of everyone, and you take the hit and it doesn't cost you anything, and you smile about it, and you have made me a spectator in my own life for 1 entire year. His hand came up. I have watched you save my life 4 times. Do you know what that does? So let me do it a 5th, Yoi. The Chidori ignited. It came up in his palm, and it was the biggest thing he had ever made, a screaming ball of blue-white lightning that lit the whole canyon and turned the rain to steam in a 2-foot radius around his fist, and the sound it made was 10,000 birds. Move, Sasuke said. Please move. Naruto Uzumaki opened his arms. No. Sasuke came across the water. He crossed 40 feet in an instant, with his arm trailing lightning, and the surface tearing open behind him in a white rooster tail. And he put the Chidori into the center of Naruto Uzumaki's chest. It went through. Straight through. In under the sternum, out through the back between the shoulder blades, and lightning sprayed out of the exit wound in a fan 12 feet wide, and blood went into the rain in a mist, and the sound was awful. Sasuke's arm was buried in Naruto's torso to the wrist. He could feel it. He could feel the space where a heart should have been and wasn't anymore. They stood there in the rain, chest to chest to chest, and Sasuke Uchiha looked up into his teammate's face with his own eyes going wide and white with horror at what he had actually just done. Naruto's head came down. He was still standing. "Hey," he said. The fire came up. It came up out of the hole in his chest and swallowed both of them, blue and gold, and the blood in the air turned to fine gray ash and blew apart, and the lightning still crackling through Naruto's ribcage guttered out and died against it, and Sasuke Uchiha felt the tissue close around his own forearm and push it, gently firmly, out of the body it was inside. Sternum. Skin. 2 seconds. Naruto Uzumaki's chest was whole and unmarked, and the last of the fire ran off his shoulders and burned away into the rain. Sasuke's arm hung at his side. He was shaking so hard he couldn't stand straight. He stared at his own hand. Naruto reached up. He put a warm, glowing palm against Sasuke Uchiha's cheek. "You can pierce my heart 1,000 times, Sasuke," he said, "but I will never let you break your own soul, Yoi." Sasuke's breath hitched, once hard. Naruto's other hand came to his solar plexus. One strike. Short, no flat, no wind up, exactly as much force as the job needed. Sasuke Uchiha folded over it, and his eyes rolled, and he was unconscious before he finished exhaling. Naruto caught him before he hit the water. Kakashi Hatake arrived 11 minutes later at the head of a recovery team, with Pakun and 4 Anbu and a medic and a body bag that he had brought, because he had done the math on a Chidori to the chest and had spent the entire run trying to decide which of his students he was going to have to carry. They came over the ridge above the falls, and what they found, walking up out of the canyon on the eastern trail through the rain, was Naruto Uzumaki with Sasuke Uchiha on his back. He had Sasuke's arms hooked over his shoulders, and Sasuke's weight settled like a boy carrying a sleeping cousin home from a festival. His jacket had a hole in the front the size of a fist and a matching one in the back, and through the holes there was nothing but unbroken skin. Phoenix feathers were still burning off his shoulders in slow blue embers, cooling, coming apart in the rain. One by one, he looked up at 8 shinobi standing on the ridge. "Oh," Naruto said. "Hey." Nobody moved. "He's fine," Naruto said. "Tired. He's had a rough couple weeks, Yoi." The medic looked at the hole in the jacket, then at Kakashi, then back at the hole. "Naruto-kun," she said, That's an exit wound." "Yeah, that's a thoracic exit wound." "Yeah, he got me pretty good." Naruto hitched Sasuke a little higher on his back and started up the trail past them, unbothered, dripping. Don't be mad at him about it. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. He was just really sad and had one good idea about lightning. He walked past Kakashi Hake. Kakashi stood in the rain on the ridge above the Valley of the End with an empty body bag rolled up under his arm, watching his student carry his other student home. And he put a hand over his own face and stood there for a while. "Sensei?" one of the Anbu said. "Give me a second." "Are you?" I said, "Give me a second." They walked back to Konoha together, the whole squad, and Naruto Uzumaki carried Sasuke Uchiha the entire 11 miles and refused every offer of help with the same 3 words each time, which was, "Nah, I got him." Sakura Haruno was waiting at the gate. She had been waiting at the gate for 2 days. When she saw them come out of the trees, she ran, and she got about 6 feet from Naruto before she saw the hole in his jacket, and stopped, and made a sound. "He's asleep," Naruto said. "Move, you're in the doorway, Yoi." She hit him. Once on the arm, hard, and then she grabbed a fistful of his sleeve and walked beside him all the way to the hospital without letting go of it, and Naruto let her. Hinata Hyuga watched all of it from the roof of the flower shop across the street because she had been on that roof since dawn, and she didn't come down and she didn't say anything. She just took a long breath. She pressed both hands flat over her own chest and felt a scrape under her eye that had been gone for a year and a half. Sasuke Uchiha woke up in a hospital bed 40 hours later with restraint seals on his wrists and a member of Anbu in the corner, and Naruto Uzumaki asleep in a chair beside the bed, with his head back and his mouth open, having sat there for 39 of the 40 hours. Sasuke looked at him for a long time. Then he turned his face to the wall and put the back of his hand over his eyes and cried without making any noise at all, for his family, for his brother, for 1 entire year of watching, and for the fact that when he had put his hand through the only person who had ever chosen him, that person's first instinct on the way back up had been to hold his face. The village put in a request to promote Naruto Uzumaki to Jonin that month, and he turned it down, which caused a small administrative crisis. And when Hiruzen Sarutobi asked him why, Naruto shrugged and said Jonin get desks, and he'd rather stay where he could see everybody. That's how part 1 ends. In a hospital corridor in a village that spent 7 years shutting doors on a starving child and got a guardian out of it anyway. An old man alive who should be Ash. A boy in a bed who came home. A crater on a training ground the academy left unrepaired on purpose because the students kept coming to look at it. Blue fire, cooling on a chair back. Hands in pockets. A kid who was already bored of surviving and had moved on to protecting instead. But the world had been watching. In a bunker under a mountain in the land of rice, a man with 2 dead arms sat in the wet and murmured to himself about fire. In a cave somewhere north, 9 holograms stood on 9 fingers of a stone hand, and a voice like grinding rock said, "The 9 tails Jinchuriki. Report." And Itachi Uchiha, in a hotel room 3 countries away, put down a cup of tea and told a man in a bamboo hat that their timeline needed to change, because there was a child in the leaf who could burn things out of a body that were never supposed to come out. How dangerous? Kisame asked. Itachi looked out the window at the rain for a while. He healed my brother's curse mark, he said. He is going to be the reason the plan fails, and I find that I am glad. Kisame set his teacup down hard enough to split the saucer under it. Glad, he said. Run that past me again, Itachi. Slower this time. I'm glad. Itachi hadn't turned from the window. The rain came off the eaves in a sheet and made a curtain between the room and the street, and he watched it like a man watching a door he decided to walk through. The plan requires that every Jinchuriki be extracted, sealed, and used. It requires that nothing in the world be able to undo what has been put into a body. That was the assumption. The whole thing rests on it. And the kid breaks the assumption. The kid is the assumption's opposite. Itachi's reflection in the glass was thin and gray around the mouth. Sasuke had 11 years of my brother's hate written into his shoulder in corrupted senjutsu, and that boy put a hand on it and treated it like a splinter. Do you understand what that means for the Gedo statue? For the Rinne rebirth? For a man who plans to put the whole world to sleep inside a technique? Kasame's grin came up slow and wide and had a lot of teeth in it. It means Samehada's gonna want to taste. Samehada eats chakra. Samehada eats everything. What he carries isn't chakra. Itachi finally turned around, and there was blood in the corner of his mouth that he wiped away with his thumb without looking at it. It doesn't flow. It sits in him and burns in place. Your sword will bite it and find out that it can't hold it, and by then your hands will be full. Kisame stood, and the ceiling of a cheap hotel room in the land of hot water was suddenly very close to his head. You almost sound like you're warning me. I am. Itachi picked up his hat. When you meet him, you'll get about 9 seconds to change your mind about the fight. My advice is that you spend them changing your mind. And you? Are you changing yours? Itachi stopped in the doorway with the rain hissing behind him. I've been carrying something for 8 years, he said. I've been looking for the right hands to put it down in. I think they might have pockets. It took Naruto Uzumaki 2.5 years to become the story people told before they told any other story. He didn't try to. That was the part the world could never get comfortable with. He walked out of Konoha's north gate behind Jiraiya of the Seinen with a pack he didn't need, hands in his pockets, and by the time he walked back in, he had 11 names in 4 countries and a page in every bingo book on the continent. And he had never once introduced himself. Some of it happened fast. In the 3rd month, the road took them under a cliff face in the land of rivers that came down on a farming village of 200 people, and Jiraiya was still forming seals when a blue phoenix 60 feet across went into the slide sideways, got both talons under a slab of shale the size of a barn, and held it, wings hammering, for 4 minutes, while the villagers dug their own children out from under it. Then he set it down on the far side of the road, folded up into a 12-year-old, and asked whether anybody had food. Some of it happened slower. In the land of waves, there was a fever in the port district that had killed 60 and had another 300 lying in the streets on mats because the clinic had run out of walls. Naruto stood on the harbor master's roof at sunset, took his hands out of his pockets, and swept both wings forward. Phoenix, Pyreapple. Blue fire came down across 9 city blocks like rain falling upward. 300 people sat up. A doctor who had been awake for 5 days walked out into the middle of the street, looked at the sky, and started laughing so hard that 2 of his own nurses had to hold him. Naruto came down off the roof and asked if there was ramen. There was, forever after that. The land of waves put a stone bird on the bridge and never explained it to visitors. Jiraiya wrote it all down for the first 6 months, then stopped because the notebook had become a list and lists don't tell you anything. Instead, he watched. He watched a boy who fell asleep in trees learn to compress his own fire until a feather sphere the size of a plum could put a hole through a boulder. He watched him practice folding, full phoenix, half phoenix, arms only, legs only, 1 wing, until it took him less time to change shape than it took a normal shinobi to make a hand seal. He watched him work the Rasengan and swear at it, and then solve it in a way that made Jiraiya's stomach drop. Rapid, Naruto said, and did, and the sphere in his palm went from grinding blue chakra to something with feathers turning inside it, cold enough to fog the air. Phoenix Rasengan. He put it into a hillside. The hillside opened up 11 feet deep and stayed open. That was the thing Jiraiya couldn't get past. The hole didn't close. Grass wouldn't grow back on the rim of it for a year. Naruto's fire healed everything it touched because Naruto's fire decided what got to heal, and when he decided a wound stayed a wound, it stayed a wound. Kid, Jiraiya said that night, you understand what you just built. A hole, Yoi. You built a wound that argues back. Naruto thought about that with a rice ball in his hand and his eyes half shut. Good, he said. Some things shouldn't get to knit. There was a fox in him who had opinions about all of it. Naruto went down to see him maybe 6 times in those 2.5 years, ankle deep in the water of his own head, and mostly Kurama refused to say anything at all. The Nine-Tails would lie behind the bars with one eye open and radiate contempt at a volume that made the pipes drip. The 5th time, he cracked. It's eating you, Kurama said. Naruto looked up. That thing you swallowed, it doesn't come from a body. It doesn't come from chakra. It sits in your bones like a nail in a plank, and one day you'll wake up and there'll be more nail than plank. That's kind of rude, Yoi. I've been inside 4 hosts. I know what a human being feels like from the inside. The huge head shifted. You don't feel like one anymore. Naruto stood there with his hands in his pockets in the water of his own mind and considered it honestly because he considered everything honestly. Okay, he said, but I still get hungry, and I still don't like the smell of hospitals, and when Sakura cries my chest goes tight, he shrugged, so probably I'm fine. The fox said nothing for a long time. It said that was the closest thing to a conversation they had for a year. The bingo books filled up. Kirigakure's entry stayed the same, unchanged from the day some clerk had written it in a hurry after the land of tea. Uzumaki, Naruto, do not engage. Flee on sight, all ranks. But Iwagakure added a page, and Kumo added 2, and the Kumo one had a note at the bottom in a different hand that read confirmed decapitation. Subject continued conversation. The Akatsuki got their orders anyway, because organizations that treat men as resources always send the resources. They came for him in the land of hot water, on a road above a river gorge, in the 2nd week of the 3rd year. Naruto felt them first. He'd gotten good at that. The fire in him ran cold and it read heat, and there were 2 heats on the ridge above the road that had been holding still for too long. 2, he said. Jiraiya's hand went to his back. Where? Up. Left. Naruto kept walking. One of them's excited. The excited one came down the slope screaming. He came down in a sprint with a 3-bladed scythe on a cable spinning over his head and his robe open to the waist over a chest full of scars. And the first thing out of his mouth wasn't a threat or a name, it was praise. Jashin-sama, thank you for this one. Look at him. Look at his face. He's not even. Hidan's scythe took Naruto's left arm off at the shoulder. It was a clean hit. Jiraiya's whole body locked. The arm went into the road dust, still in its sleeve, and blood went up in a spray that painted the rock wall behind them. And Hidan whooped like a man who'd won a raffle. Naruto looked at the space where his arm had been. Blue fire came up out of the stump and built the arm back in the time it took Hidan to finish whooping. Muscle first, then a hand, then a sleeve of the jacket knitting itself out of ash and fire. Because at some point in the last 2 years, Naruto had stopped bothering to separate his clothes from the process. He flexed the new fingers. "That's my jacket," he said. "That's the third one this month, yoi." Hidan stopped whooping. Behind him, a second man came down the slope without hurrying. And where Hidan was all open mouth and motion, this one was a tower of stitched hide and hooded stillness. And he stopped at 40 feet and studied Naruto, the way a man studies a horse he's thinking about buying. "Regeneration," Kakuzu said. "Bounty says regeneration. Bounty didn't say it was instant." "Bounty," Naruto repeated. 210 million ryo, highest standing price in the book. Kakuzu's hood turned. "It's the only reason I'm on this road. Understand that I don't care what you are. I care what you weigh in a bag." "Cool, yoi." Naruto's hands went back into his pockets. "Jiraiya, go sit down." "Kid, go sit down, please." Jiraiya of the Sannin, who had stood against Hanzo of the Salamander at 19 and lived, took 11 steps backward and sat down on a rock, because after 2.5 years, he had learned exactly one lesson about traveling with Naruto Uzumaki, and the lesson was that helping made it slower. Hidan came in again. He was fast and he was skilled, and there was nothing wrong with his technique at all. The scythe came around low, changed line mid-swing on the cable, and buried all 3 blades in Naruto's gut and dragged out sideways. Naruto let it happen. He watched it happen. He put a hand on the cable, casual as a man catching a bus rail, and while the wound in his stomach was still closing, he pulled. He then came off his feet and went past Naruto's shoulder into the rock wall face first at a speed that broke his own jaw. He got up spitting teeth and grinning through the blood, because he was already licking Naruto's blood off the scythe blade. "Got it," he crowed. "Got it, got it, got it! Hey kid, hey! Watch this!" He drew a circle on the road with his own foot in his own blood, a triangle inside it. He stepped into the middle and threw his arms out. Curse technique. Death controlling possessed blood. His skin went black and white in a pattern like a stripped skeleton. "Now," Hidan said, and his voice had gone soft and happy, "whatever I do to me happens to you. So let's start with something fun." He took a spike out of his belt and drove it through his own thigh. Naruto stood in the road with his hands in his pockets. Hidan waited. He waited 3 seconds, which for him was an eternity, and then he looked at Naruto's leg. "Huh," Naruto said. "Why aren't you?" Hidan pulled the spike out and slammed it into his own thigh again. "Why aren't you screaming?" "Oh, it worked," Naruto said. "Both times. Hole opened up in my leg and shut again before I got the chance to feel bad about it." He rolled a shoulder. "You've got a good technique, man. It's just aimed at somebody who doesn't stay hurt." Hidan's face went through 4 things at once and landed on rage. He put the spike through his own heart. It came out the back of his robe. Blood came out of his mouth. He stood there, grinning, waiting to see a boy drop dead on a road in the land of hot water. Naruto's heart burst inside his chest. He felt it happen. He felt the muscle tear and the pressure drop, and the gray come rushing in at the sides of his vision. And he was already rebuilt before his knees got the message, and all that came out of him was a short breath through the nose. "Okay, that one stung, yoi." Hidan stopped grinning. "You can't die. Neither can you, right?" Naruto tilted his head. "That's the pitch? You're immortal?" "I am immortal." Hidan tore the spike out of his own chest and threw both arms wide, and the pattern on his skin flared. "I've had my head cut off twice. I've had Akiri Jonin cut me in half at the waist, and I sewed myself back together while he was still congratulating himself. Jashin doesn't allow it. There is nothing on this earth that can put me down, you smug little..." "Yeah," Naruto said. "See, that's the thing." He took one hand out of his pocket. "Immortality's just a wound nobody's cleaned yet, yoi." He crossed the road. Hidan swung. The scythe came around at head height, and Naruto ducked under it without breaking stride and put his open palm flat on Hidan's sternum, right in the middle of the black and white pattern, and opened everything he had. The blue fire went in. Hidan screamed. It came out of him at a pitch no adult male throat should reach, and it was surprise before it was pain. The fire didn't burn his skin. It went past his skin, into the thing under it, and it found the ritual. A curse 803 sacrifices deep, a bargain welded into a man's nerves and blood and marrow, an artificial hook that had been holding a soul in a body it had no right to stay in. Naruto's fire looked at that hook and did what his fire always did with things that had been put into a body from outside. It treated it as rot. The black and white pattern peeled off Hidan's skin like paint under a torch, curling and going gray and coming apart in flakes that turned to ash before they hit the road. The scarring on his chest, 800 wounds that had closed wrong on purpose, smoothed out into ordinary skin. His broken jaw straightened, his thigh closed. Every gift he'd been given got taken back and every debt got paid off. And what stood in the road at the end of it was a healthy man in his early 30s with all his teeth and none of his God. Hidan felt it go. No. He said, no, where is he? I can't hear him. I can't hear him. He's not. His hands went over his own chest, patting, searching. Oh no, I'm mortal. Yeah, Naruto said. Then he wasn't anything. Naruto's arm came apart into a wing, and the wing came around in a single sweep at chest height, and the leading edge of it was packed with chakra so dense it had gone the color of poured glass, and it went through Hidan of Yugakure at the collarbone, and came out under the opposite arm, the top third of him left. It went over the gorge edge and turned twice in the air and hit the river 90 feet down. The rest folded into the road. Kakuzu hadn't moved. He looked at the two pieces of his partner of 4 years. He looked at the ash still drifting off the road where a curse mark had been. And what he did then was pull his hood back and start unbuttoning his cloak, which is the most respect a man like that has ever paid anyone. You purge, he said. That's what the report missed. They said you heal. You purge. Same thing from where I stand, Yoi. It isn't. Kakuzu's cloak came off. Under it, his back was a mass of stitching, and the stitching moved. I've been alive 91 years. I fought the first Hokage when I was younger than you. I've kept myself running on other men's organs since before your grandparents were born, and I did it because I understood one rule about combat that nobody else does. Which is? Nobody wins a war of attrition against a man with spare parts. 4 shapes tore out of his back. They came out through the skin in a wet unfolding of black thread and muscle. 4 masked things on 4 thick cables of stitching, and they arranged themselves around him, 1 on each shoulder, 2 hovering behind. Each mask had a different face. Each one had a heart in it that had been someone else's. Earth grudge fear, Kakuzu said. 5 hearts, 5 elements. Kill me 4 times, and I'll still be standing here when you're old. Great, Yoi. Naruto's shoulders came down. That's 4 less times I have to look for you. Kakuzu attacked with everything at once, because he was 91 years old and had never once in his life underestimated anybody. Fire style, searing migraine. Wind style, pressure damage. The wind mask threw a compressed gale, and the fire mask threw a jet into the middle of it, and the 2 techniques married in the air, the way they had 1,000 times, and became a rolling wall of flame 200 feet wide that came down the road and took the trees off both sides of the gorge. Jiraiya threw up an earth wall and got behind it. Naruto walked into the fire. He came out the other side of it on fire, unhurt, hands in his pockets, with his hair standing up in the updraft, and he was already inside Kakuzu's guard. Kakuzu's arm came apart into 100 threads and reformed around Naruto in a cage of black wire and squeezed and cut. It cut down to bone in 11 places. It would have taken a jonin apart into wet sections. Naruto's arms came out of the cage as wings. They opened, the threads went with them. 200 pounds of tension broke all at once with a sound like a bridge cable letting go. And Kakuzu was dragged 3 steps off balance for the first time in 19 years, and Naruto stepped inside his reach and put his hand into his chest, straight in, under the ribs, up, and the flesh of Kakuzu's torso, flesh he'd stitched and restitched for 90 years, parted around a wrist wrapped in blue fire because the fire opened what it decided to open. Naruto closed his fingers. He pulled a heart out of Kakuzu's chest and held it up. That's one, he said. and squeezed, and the heart burned to fine gray ash in his fist and blew off his knuckles in the wind coming up the gorge. Kakuzu didn't scream. That was the thing Jiraiya reported later and had trouble with. Kakuzu of the waterfall looked at his own heart going to powder in a 12-year-old's hand and reset his stance and sent all 4 masks at once. Lightning style, false darkness. The lightning mask fired a spear of white through Naruto's throat. He kept walking. Earth style, earth spear. The earth mask hardened Kakuzu's whole body to stone grade, and he threw a punch that had cracked Akage's ribs in 1962. Naruto caught the fist with one hand and broke the wrist backward with the other, and put a talon through the earth mask's face, and the mask crumpled inward and something inside it stopped beating. 2. Yoi. The fire mask came in low from behind. Naruto's leg came apart and reformed, scaled gold and enormous, and he brought it down. Phoenix brand. Both talons drove the fire mask through the road's surface and into the packed rock beneath it, and 11 feet of the road went with it, and the gorge edge sheared off and dropped 100 tons of shale into the river below. The mask burst like a dropped melon. The heart inside it went up in blue flame and came apart. 3. Kakuzu backed off. He was moving fast now, and there was something in the way he was moving that hadn't been there 90 seconds ago, and Naruto noticed it and named it out loud without any meanness in his voice at all. You're checking your exits. I'm assessing. You're checking your exits. Naruto's wings swept back. 91 years, man. I get it, but you didn't come out here to fight me. You came out here for money. That's the whole difference between us, and it's the only one that matters, Yoi. He went up, 40 feet, straight up, so fast the dust on the ruined road stood up in a ring, and at the top of it, he folded both wings flat against his back and turned his beak down and dropped. Azure Arc. He came down on Kakuzu like a thrown mountain. The road stopped existing. The impact drove Kakuzu of the waterfall face down through the roadbed, through 11 feet of shale, and into the bedrock underneath. And the gorge wall came apart in a slab 100 feet wide and slid into the river and dammed it for 2 days. The sound reached a village 9 miles east, and 2 people there reported an earthquake. When the dust came off, there was a crater with a phoenix standing in the bottom of it, and under the phoenix's talons there was a body still moving. 2 hearts left. Kakuzu's remaining masks were pinned under 6 tons of rock. His spine had come apart in 3 places and stitched itself back together at a bad angle. He got one arm free and put a hand flat on the stone, and blood came out of the corner of his mouth in a thick rope, and he laughed once, one dry bark of it. Attrition, he said. Naruto's fire went out. The wings folded. The boy crouched down in the crater in front of him. Nah, Naruto said. You just ran out of other people to be. He reached in twice more. The first heart went to ash in his left hand. The second went to ash in his right. And Kakuzu, 91 years old, veteran of a war whose survivors were all dead, felt his own body stop being a thing he owned, and the last thing he saw was a boy dusting gray powder off his palms with the disinterest of somebody who'd finished eating shellfish. Naruto stood up. Jiraiya, you okay? Yoi? Jiraiya of the Sannin came down the ruined slope of what had been a road and stood in a crater between 2 corpses. One of them had been immortal by contract. One of them had been immortal by inventory. Both of them were now permanently and completely finished, and the entire event had taken 4 minutes and 11 seconds, and the boy who'd done it was checking a hole in his jacket with the mild irritation of a man who'd found a moth in a drawer. Naruto. There are 9 of them. Jiraiya's voice came out wrong and he let it. 9 in that organization. 2 of them are on this road. I need you to understand that I brought you out here for 3 years to make you strong enough to survive them, and it turns out I was. He stopped. Started again. I've been training a man to survive a fire while he was on fire. Naruto looked up. You taught me the Rasengan, he said. You taught me how to talk to people who don't like me. You bought me dinner 400 times. You told me my dad's name at the top of a mountain when you didn't have to. He put his hands in his pockets. That's not survival stuff, old man. That's the other stuff. I needed the other stuff, Yoi. Jiraiya put a hand over his eyes and stood in a crater for a while. Then they went to find lunch and left two of the strongest men in the Akatsuki lying in a broken road. And the news of it went out across 4 countries in 9 days, and Kirigakure amended their bingo book entry for the first time in 3 years. They added, in the margin, "This includes you." Sasuke Uchiha spent 11 months in restraint seals, and every single day of it in the same 3 rooms. They took the seals off in the spring of the year. Naruto came home. Hiruzen Sarutobi did it himself in his office with 2 anbu on the beams and the paperwork already signed, and he did it because Kakashi had come to him 9 times and Sakura Haruno had come to him 22. And because the old man had made a career out of knowing when a thing had finished breaking and started mending. Sasuke walked out into Konoha with bare wrists and nowhere to stand. His brother was a ghost he wasn't allowed to chase anymore, because a boy in an orange jacket had already put that ghost through a wall. His clan was Ash. His revenge had been taken away from him by kindness, which is the worst way to lose anything. And for 11 months, he had been sitting in a room understanding that the only unfinished business he had left was a man with 2 dead arms in a hole in the land of rice. He left in June in daylight through the front gate with a signed travel pass he'd applied for legally. That's what nobody expected. He got 11 miles before a shadow crossed the road in front of him and folded down into a shape with its hands in its pockets. "Hey," Naruto said, "go home." "Where are you going, Yoi?" "You know where I'm going." Sasuke kept walking. Naruto walked beside him. "He put something in me. You took it out. That doesn't finish it. He's still in a hole somewhere planning to put it in somebody else. And the somebody else will be a 9-year-old from a village with nobody watching. And his jaw worked. "I have to be the one. I need one thing in my life that I did." "Okay." Sasuke stopped walking. "Okay?" "Yeah, okay. Land of Rice is that way." Naruto pointed with his chin. "I'll come. I'll stay out of it unless you're dying, and then I'll come in and you can be mad at me about it after, Yoi." Sasuke stood in the road for a long moment. "That's the deal? That's the deal. Fine." They walked into the land of rice together. And 11 days later, they found the White Snake Sanctuary in a valley under a mountain that had a shrine on it that nobody had prayed at in 80 years. And there were 31 sound shinobi at the entrance, and Sasuke Uchiha went through all 31 of them himself. It took him 19 minutes, and he came out of it bleeding from the scalp and the hip, and he'd used the Chidori 4 times and a Genjutsu twice and one thing with a sword that Kakashi hadn't taught him. And when it was over, he stood in the doorway breathing hard with his shoulders shaking. Naruto hadn't moved off the ridge. "You good?" "Don't." "Wasn't gonna say anything, Yoi. You were going to heal me. Little bit. Don't." Sasuke wiped blood out of his eye. "I want to walk in there with these." Naruto shrugged and came down the slope, and the 2 of them went into the mountain. The corridors went down for a mile. The lights were tanks, glass cylinders in the walls, floor to ceiling, with things floating in them, and some of the things had faces that Sasuke recognized from sound uniforms, and some of the things had 4 arms, and one of them turned its head and watched them go past. "He's been busy, Yoi. He's been shopping." Sasuke's voice had gone flat. Every one of these was a body he was considering. They found Kabuto Yakushi in the 6th chamber, and Kabuto Yakushi wasn't quite a man anymore. He'd started the work on himself 2 years before out of ambition and finished it out of fear. His left arm was white and jointed wrong. There were scales up the side of his throat, and his eyes had gone yellow at the edges, and he stood on a walkway above a floor covered in cables with a scalpel in each hand and something like relief on his face. "You came together," he said. "He said you would. He said the Uchiha would come alone and the Phoenix would follow him like a dog, and he's been right about everything for 60 years, so." "Where is he, Yoi?" "Below, preparing." Kabuto's smile went thin. "You should know that he isn't afraid of you. He studied you. 11 weeks of notes, 400 pages, and he found the flaw." "What flaw?" "You purge what's put into a body." Kabuto's shoulders came up. "So he's going to stop being in a body." Then he came off the walkway. Sasuke met him. It was a real fight. Kabuto was fast and a medic, and he'd fought Kakashi Hake to a standstill once, and he opened Sasuke's forearm to the bone in the first 8 seconds, and closed his own throat wound with a hand while he did it. He fought Sasuke for 2 minutes on a floor full of cables, and Sasuke's Sharingan was spinning, and he was losing, and he knew he was losing, and he kept going anyway. Naruto watched from the wall with his hands in his pockets and let him have it, because the deal was the deal. Then Kabuto put a chakra scalpel into Sasuke's chest and cut the muscle over his heart, and Sasuke went down on one knee, and Naruto came off the wall. He crossed the room without making any sound at all. Kabuto turned. He got one arm up. It was the correct thing to do, and it made no difference in the world, because Naruto's right hand came around already wrapped in turning feathers, and the sphere at the center of it was cold enough to fog the air in a room full of steam pipes. Phoenix Rasengan. It went into Kabuto Yakushi's abdomen and out through his spine. The hole it left was 8 inches across, and it went all the way through, and it did something the room's medical mind understood in the last 2 seconds of its life. It refused to close. Kabuto's regeneration fired. It fired hard. He'd built himself a healing factor out of Karen's blood and Orochimaru's cells in 11 years of study, and the wound looked at it and stayed open, edges blue and cold and glowing. Because Naruto Uzumaki's fire had already decided that this one wasn't getting knit, Kabuto looked down into himself. That's not. He came apart at the middle and went down in 2 directions. Naruto crouched by Sasuke and put a hand on his chest without asking, and the cut over his heart closed, and Sasuke didn't argue about it this time. Below, Sasuke said. He said below. Below was a chamber the size of a stadium with a floor of black water. Orochimaru of the Sannin stood in the middle of it on a platform of stacked coffins, and there were 51 of them, and every single one was open and empty and waiting. His arms hung at his sides in their sleeves, dead from the elbow down, black as burnt rope, and he had not been able to form a hand seal with his own fingers in 3 years. He had gotten around it. "Do you have any idea," he said, "how much of my life I have spent working around a problem?" The water moved. Things came up out of it. His vessels, 20 of them, grown bodies with blank faces and no minds in them at all, and they arranged themselves in a ring, and they moved when he moved because he'd spent 3 years wiring his intent into somebody else's muscles. "I cannot make seals," Orochimaru said, and his ruined jaw was still wired at one hinge and it clicked when he talked. "So I made 40 hands. I cannot fight. So I bought soldiers. I cannot heal my arms." He tilted his head. "So I stopped needing them, Sasuke-kun. You look well. Come here." "You bit me," Sasuke said. "I invested in you. You put something in me that screamed, and it was removed." Orochimaru's eyes went past him. "By him, which is, I confess, why we're all in this room." 20 vessels came across the water at once. Sasuke took 11. He fought them the whole way, and he was magnificent about it, and afterward, he'd remember almost none of it. Naruto took 9, and he took them in 11 seconds, and he took them the way a man clears a table. The first one he put a talon through and left standing while its knees caught up. The second one he took by the head and threw through the third, and both of them went into the chamber wall 30 feet up and stayed in it. The fourth he hit with a wing edge at the waist. The 5th through 8th came together in a wave, and he swept one wing forward, and a spiral of blue fire, Fujiazami, turned the wave back on itself so hard that all 4 of them broke their own arms trying to stop. Then he stepped through the spiral and finished them. The 9th got a hand on him. It got 2 hands on him, actually, wrapped its arms around his chest from behind and locked, and Orochimaru said, with real pleasure, "Now." The chamber's water rose. Cursed seal formation, 8 branches. The thing that came out of the black water was 180 feet long and had 8 heads, and it was Orochimaru, all of it, every inch. The body he'd been building in this room for 3 years, white and scaled and hideous, and the 8 heads came down on Naruto from 8 directions at once, and the whole chamber shook. Naruto's arms came apart. The wings opened inside the 9th vessel's grip and tore it into pieces, and he went up and 8 sets of jaws closed on the space he'd been in and bit each other. "You cannot hurt what has 51 spare bodies." Orochimaru's voice came out of all 8 throats at once, and the chamber amplified it. "Do you understand? I have solved death. It took me 60 years and I solved it, and there is nothing in this room, nothing on this earth. Which one's the real Yuyoi? The heads paused. All of them. Cool. Naruto folded his wings. Hibashira. He came down on the center of the mass and drove both talons into it, and a pillar of blue fire erupted straight up out of the point of impact. It went 80 feet. It hit the chamber ceiling and spread across it, and it lifted the entire 8-headed body off the water floor from the inside, all 180 feet of it, and held it in the air on a column of resurrection fire. And while it hung there, the fire did what it does. It went through him. Orochimaru of the Sannin had spent 60 years making himself into a thing that could be repaired. Snake cells, grafted DNA, 43 test subjects worth of tissue, 11 separate seals written into his spine to anchor a soul in place during transfer, a curse mark system, a body made of loans. The blue fire read every one of those as damage. The scales came off him in sheets and went to ash. The 8 throats went to one throat. The grafts came apart at the joins, and each one that came apart made him smaller, and he came down out of the pillar as a man. Just a man. Pale, wet, ordinary, no longer than 6 feet, with 2 dead arms and a wired jaw, and a face he'd stolen from somebody in 1987. Sloughing off his own, he hit the water on his knees. Transfer, he said. Transfer, living corpse reincarnation. The technique fired. He aimed it at Sasuke, because of course he did, and Sasuke Uchiha felt something take hold of the back of his head like a hand grabbing hair. Naruto put his palm on Sasuke's neck. The hold came off. Naruto's fire went up the line of it, up the connection, backward into the thing that had thrown it. And the transfer technique came apart in the middle of its own execution, and Orochimaru screamed like a man who'd had a limb taken while he was still using it. Edo Tensei, he sobbed. Impure world reincarnation. I have the seals prepared. I have 4. 2 coffins started to rise from the stack. Naruto swept one wing. Shiranui. It was the first time he'd ever used it, and he'd been working on it for 8 months. And the version he threw in that chamber was a wing beat's worth. A rolling wall of blue and gold that crossed the black water in a line and went through the coffin stack and out the far wall. Every coffin in the room came apart. The 2 rising ones split open, and the reanimation script inside them whitened and peeled, and the 2 bodies in them turned to ordinary bone, ordinary dust, dead men allowed to be dead. The seal formulas painted on the chamber floor went gray. 11 storage arrays in the walls opened and gave up. Orochimaru knelt in the water in the middle of a room where every mechanism he had built had been switched off at once. He tried to melt into the floor, and the floor wouldn't take him. He tried to shed his skin, and there was nothing under it but skin. He tried to make one hand seal with a dead hand, and the hand hung there. And then he did the thing he had spent 60 years, 400 experiments, and every relationship in his life, ensuring he would never have to do. He looked up at something that was going to kill him. Naruto came down out of the air and landed in the water in front of him, and the fire pulled off his shoulders, and he stood there with his hands going into his pockets. 60 years running from one thing, Naruto said. Say hi, Yoi. Orochimaru's mouth opened. Wait. Naruto's hand came out of his pocket and went into his chest. He took the heart out. It was a small, ugly, overworked thing with 11 years of grafted tissue stitched into the wall of it. And Orochimaru of the Sannin got to watch it burn to gray ash in a 12-year-old's fist from a distance of 9 inches. And the last expression on his face was pure astonishment. Then Naruto put his other hand on the man's forehead and let the rest of the fire in. That was the part that mattered. That was the part that made it permanent. Because Orochimaru had spent his whole life making sure that the thing which was him could survive the death of any container, and there was an anchor for it written into the base of his skull in a script he'd invented himself, and the blue fire found the anchor and treated it as infection, and it burned it out the same way it had burned a curse mark out of a shoulder in the forest of death. The body went slack. Nothing left it. Nothing rose out of it. Nothing crawled away. Nothing went looking for a jar. Sasuke Uchiha walked across a floor of black water and stood over a pile of gray ash in the shape of a man and waited to feel something. Is he? Yeah. All of him? All of him, Yoi? Sasuke stood there. He had organized 11 months around this. Before that, he'd organized 19 days around leaving for it. And what he found in himself, standing over it, was a wide, flat nothing doll, the kind of nothing you get in a house after the furniture's been carried out. I thought it would feel something, he said. Yeah, it doesn't do that. What does? Naruto scratched the back of his head. Breakfast, mostly, he said. And people. Mostly people, Yoi. Sasuke made a sound that was almost a laugh and put a hand over his own face. They came out of the mountain at dawn and walked home together. And 11 miles from Konoha's gate, Sasuke Uchiha stopped in the road and said, without looking up, Sakura's gonna hit me. Oh, for sure. On the arm? Face, probably. Naruto's hands went into his pockets. You should let her, Yoi. The bird from Suna came 8 weeks later, and it came at 3 in the morning, which is how you know it's real. Gaara of the Desert, 5th Kazekage of Sunagakure, 4 months into the job, had gone up over his own village wall alone to meet something that was in the sky, and Suna had lost him. The message that reached Hiruzen Sarutobi's desk said taken. The message that reached Naruto Uzumaki, because Kakashi Hake read the second page and made a decision, said the Ichibi has been extracted and the host is deceased. Recovery of remains requested. Naruto read it twice, then he set it down and said, I liked him, and left the office through the window. He got to Suna in 5 hours and 11 minutes, which is a distance normal shinobi cover in 3 days, and he covered it at 60 feet of Phoenix at 4,000 feet with the moon on his left wing. And 11 separate border patrols in the Land of Wind reported a blue comet going west and filed it as a natural event because there was nothing else to call it. Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke arrived a day and a half after him. They found the Suna gate open and unattended, and a village in the middle of an argument with itself, and Tamari of the Desert standing in the plaza in front of the Kazekage's tower with her fan on her back and her eyes red-rimmed and swollen and furious about it. He's already gone after them, she said. Your friend. He landed on the wall, asked one question and left. What question? Kakashi said. Which way? Chiyo of Suna, 88 years old, sat on the tower steps with her hands on her knees and looked at Sakura Haruno for a while. They took my grandson's teacher, she said. The red sand. Sasori. He's out there in a cave with the boy's body, and he's been building puppets for 40 years, and there's nobody left in this village who can stop him. There's somebody, Sakura said. 200 miles east, in a canyon that had been a river when the sage was alive, Naruto Uzumaki walked up to a boulder with a 5-seal barrier on it and pulled the boulder out of the cliff. He didn't unseal it. He put both hands on it and pulled 140 tons of granite out of the rock face and threw it over his shoulder into the canyon, and the 5 tags went with it, and the sound brought both men inside up onto their feet. Then he walked in. Gaara's body lay in the middle of the cave floor with the sand gone out of him. 9 days of extraction, and whatever the Akatsuki statue does to a Jinchuriki, it had done all of it, and the boy who had been the 5th Kazekage of the sand was gray and cold and 18 hours dead. There was a blond man sitting on him. Deidara of Iwagakure had one leg crossed over the other and an elbow on his knee, and he was in the middle of saying something to his partner when the light changed. And what he said, when he saw a shape in the entrance with its hands in its pockets, was, "Oh, hey, it's the bird." "Get off him," Naruto said. "That's a corpse, yeah. Get off him." Something in the way he said it made Deidara stand up. The other one didn't move at all. He was sitting against the far wall in a hunched shape, wrapped in a robe with a tail curled up over his shoulder. And when he spoke, his voice came out of the middle of the hood like a voice out of a jar. "Deidara, step back. This one's mine. Aw, come on. Master Sasori, I've been waiting." I said step back. Sasori of the Red Sand came out of Hiroko in a single motion, and the puppet he'd worn for 20 years came apart around him like a shed shell. And what stood up inside it was a red-haired young man in his 20s who had stopped aging when he was 28 and stopped being flesh 11 months later. "I'll be honest with you," Sasori said. "I don't care about the 9 tails. I care about a body that can't be broken. I have spent 42 years trying to make one. And now here you come walking into my cave with the answer, and I want to see what's in you. And after that, I'm going to put you on a stand in my collection with a number on your foot." Cool, Naruto said. How many you got, Yoi? Sasori's hand came up and a scroll unrolled behind him and kept unrolling. 198. He said they came out of the scroll in a flood. It's worth being clear about what that looks like, because everybody who ever heard the story told it wrong. It wasn't a wall of puppets. It was a room filling up. 198 human bodies, hollowed and jointed and strung, every one of them a shinobi Sasori had killed and kept. And they came out of the seal in a rolling wave that filled the cave floor to the walls and then started climbing the walls. And every single one had a blade or a barrel or a spring-loaded arm. 240 poisoned weapons went off at once. Naruto stood in the middle of it and let the first volley land. He wanted to read. 11 blades went into his back and 4 into his chest and 1 through his cheek, and the poison went in with them. Sasori's own compound, the one that shut down a man's nervous system in 4 seconds and killed in 3 days. The poison stopped existing inside him. His fire looked at it, found it foreign, and burned it out of his blood before it reached his heart, and the blades pushed themselves back out of the closing holes and dropped on the stone. Huh, Sasori said. That's the poison useless then. Yeah, Yoi. Fine. Then Naruto's arms came apart, and he stopped being polite about it. The wings that opened in that cave went 25 feet, and there wasn't room for 25 feet, and that turned out to be the point. He swept once and 11 puppets went into the cave wall as splinters. He swept back, and the leading edge of the wing, packed dense, glass hard, humming, went through 19 puppet bodies at chest height and through the arms of 6 more, and the wooden pieces came off the wall like hail. Crane talons. His legs came apart into gold and 4 black talons apiece, and he tore an 11-foot line through the middle of the swarm, and the line went through 40 puppets and into the cave floor 2 feet deep, and the whole cave floor cracked from wall to wall. Sasori's face didn't change because his face couldn't. 41 seconds. That's what 198 puppets bought him. Naruto Uzumaki went through Sasori of the Red Sands life's work in 41 seconds, and at the end of it, he was standing on a floor of broken wood and lacquered faces up to his shins, and the only thing still moving in the cave was Sasori himself and Deidara backing toward the entrance. All right, Sasori said. Then let's do it properly. The last scroll came off his back. Third Kazekage. The thing that came out of it had been the strongest Kaji the sand ever produced, and it had been dead for 20 years. And Sasori had kept it, and the sand that came out of its chest cavity was black. Iron sand. It went up in a cloud that filled the top third of the cave, and then compacted, and the shapes it made were spears, thousands, each one a foot long, hanging in the air point down like a ceiling full of nails. Iron sand world order. The cloud came down. 11,000 pounds of magnetized iron formed into a mass of interlocking spikes the size of a house, dropped on the middle of the cave and drove itself into the floor. It went through the puppet wreckage. It went through the stone. It cratered the bedrock. Deidara had to jump for the entrance, and he lost half his cloak doing it. Underneath it, nothing moved. Sasori waited. He waited 9 seconds, which for him was an unusual thing. The iron mass came apart from the inside. It didn't melt. It flew, blown outward in every direction, 11,000 pounds of it, and the pieces went into the cave walls hard enough to stay there. And standing in the middle of the crater was a phoenix with its wings still coming down. Naruto folded them and walked out of the hole. Iron's heavy, Yoi, he said. It's just heavy. That's the whole thing it does. Sasori threw the third Kazekage at him. It was the correct play. The puppet was fast, and it had a poison blade, and it had a core of iron sand that reformed no matter how many times you broke it. It came in low, and Naruto let it come, and then he caught it by the throat. He held the third Kazekage of Tsunagakure up off the floor by the neck with one hand and looked past it at the man on the other end of the strings. This the guy you're proudest of? He's my finest. Okay. Naruto put his other hand through the puppet's chest, took the iron sand core out of it, closed his fist, and the core went to ash. That shouldn't be possible with iron. It wasn't iron by then. It was a chakra-conducting mass that a dead man had been converted into and a live man had been steering. and Naruto's fire read the whole arrangement as an infection in a body and cleaned it. The third Kazekage came apart into 100 pieces of dry wood and old bone and hit the floor as garbage. "Oh," Sasori said. He opened his own chest. That was the last thing he had. Sasori of the Red Sand had made himself into a puppet, and he'd been honest about it in his own way, and the only human piece he'd kept was the heart, and it sat in a cylinder in the middle of his chest cavity with his own name painted on the front, and it was the reason he was still there at all. He opened it because he was going to launch himself. He had 100 blades in his torso and a body that weighed nothing, and he'd killed a Kage with that opening move once. Naruto was already inside it. He crossed 11 feet without a wing beat, put his left hand flat on Sasori's collarbone to stop him, and reached into the open chest cavity with his right. He took the cylinder out. "You know what's funny?" Naruto said, and his voice was so level it made Deidara's skin crawl from 30 feet away. "Is you spent 40 years making yourself into something that can't be broken, and you left the one part of you that matters in a little jar in the middle of your chest with your name on it." Sasori looked at his own heart in a boy's hand. "That," he said, "is a fair criticism." Naruto closed his fingers. The cylinder crushed. What was inside it burned to gray ash and blew out between his knuckles, and the puppet body of Sasori of the Red Sand went limp all at once, every joint quitting at the same instant, and folded down onto the floor of a cave full of the ruins of 198 people who had never gotten to be buried. Deidara ran. He got 200 feet up the canyon and got a bird made and got himself onto it, and he was screaming with laughter the whole time because that was how he handled being terrified. "C1! C1! C1!" Clay birds came off him in a stream. They exploded on Naruto's back, on his shoulders, in his face, and the blue fire put him back together faster than the clay could take him apart. "That's okay. Okay, fine. You want art? You want to see real art? Yeah, fine." He put a hand in his chest pocket and swallowed something. C4, Karura. The bird he made was 50 feet long, and it went up over the canyon, and it came apart, and what came out of it was a cloud. Deidara's C4 is a spore. It's the finest work he ever did, and he was proud of it for the correct reasons. A microscopic cloud of clay that a man breathes in and that detonates inside him at the cellular level. And there's no defense and there's no armor, and it doesn't matter how strong you are because it doesn't hit you from outside. The cloud came down and swallowed the canyon floor for a quarter mile. Deidara triggered it. The canyon went white. The blast took the top 40 feet off both walls. It rolled east and blew a dry riverbed clean down to bedrock. It reached the Suna Border Patrol 11 miles away as a wall of dust and a sound they filed as a mountain coming down. Deidara's own bird got flipped, and he had to make another one in the air. And he was howling, actually howling, hanging in the sky over a crater a quarter mile wide. "That's art! That's... The dust turned blue at the bottom. Something came up through it. Naruto Uzumaki walked out of the crater on the eastern slope, and he was brushing clay dust off the front of his jacket with the back of his hand, and he was frowning at it a little. "That's gonna stain," he said. Deidara stopped laughing. "You breathed it in," he said. "You breathed it in. I watched you. It was inside your..." "Yeah, it was." Naruto's arms came apart. "It's not anymore, Yoi." He came up at Deidara from below at a speed that left a line in the air. Deidara got one hand into his pouch. That's as far as he got. Naruto's talons closed on the clay bird and tore through it and through the man standing on it, and the wing edge came around and took Deidara of Iwagakure apart at the ribs, and the pieces of him went down 200 feet into the canyon in 4 directions, and the mouth in his left palm was still opening and closing when it hit the rocks. He never got to say it. He'd said it 11,000 times in his life, and he'd been saving the good version for a real audience. And the real audience took him apart in the air before the first syllable. Naruto came down in the canyon, walked back into the cave, and knelt beside Gaara. Kakashi's team found him there 40 minutes later. They came down the canyon past the 2 halves of 198 puppets in a crater you could have put the academy in. And Chiyo of Suna, who had walked 200 miles on 88-year-old legs and had a technique in her pocket that trades one life for another and had every intention of using it on her grandson's friend, came into that cave ready to die. She stopped in the entrance. Naruto had Gaara laid out flat on the stone. He'd taken the sand out of his hair. He'd put the boy's hands at his sides and closed his eyes with 2 fingers, and now he was standing over him and his arms were coming apart. "Boy," Chiyo said. "Boy, I have a technique." "Nah, Yoi." The wings opened in the cave and there wasn't room, and the roof went anyway, stone coming off the ceiling in slabs as 25 feet of wingspan stood up and pushed the cave open to the sky, and the sun came down into it, and the fire came down with the sun. Phoenix Pineapple. It fell on Gaara of the desert like cold rain. Sakura Haruno had her hand over her mouth. Sasuke was standing very still. Chiyo of Suna, who had made puppets out of 100 men and knew exactly what a corpse 18 hours old could and could not do, watched gray skin go pink at the throat. The blue fire went into him. It found the hole where a Biju had been torn out through 9 days of extraction, and it closed it. It found a heart that had stopped, and it argued with it. It found the wreckage that the Ichibi's removal had left in a boy's chakra system, and it treated every bit of it as damage, and one by one it put it back. Naruto crouched down next to him. "Sit up," he said. "You aren't done, Yoi." Gaara of the desert took a breath. It came in ragged and awful, and his whole chest heaved with it, and his eyes came open on a cave roof full of sky, and the first thing he saw was a face he tried to kill once at a stadium and hadn't managed to. Naruto. "Hey, I was." Gaara's hand came up and he looked at it. "I don't have him. The Ichibi's gone. I can feel it. There's nothing there. I should be." "Dead, yeah." Naruto stood, hands into pockets. "Turns out that's negotiable." Tamari of the desert dropped to her knees on the stone floor and put both hands over her face and made a sound that 11 people heard, and none of them ever repeated. Kankuro, who had been carried in on a stretcher with Sasori's poison in him 3 hours from killing him, was already sitting up because the wing sweep had taken his poison too, and he was staring at his own hands with his mouth open. Chiyo of Suna sat down on a rock. She'd come to trade her life for the Kazekages. She'd spent the whole 200 miles making peace with it, and she'd been looking forward to it a little. "You just," she said. "Yeah, that's 140 years of medical theory." "Sorry, Yoi." "Don't be sorry," Chiyo snapped, and then she laughed until she had to hold her own ribs, an 88-year-old woman laughing in a broken cave, and she died 4 years later in her own bed with her family around her, which is the only reason this story bothers to mention her at all. They walked Gaara back to Sunagakure on his own feet. Word had gone ahead. Word always went ahead. And when they came in through the eastern gate, with the Kazekage walking under his own power, between a Konoha Jinin team and an old woman, the whole village was in the street, not cheering. Suna doesn't cheer. They knelt. 11,000 people in a desert village, in the sand, on both knees, all the way from the gate to the tower, and they did it without anybody organizing it, and they did it facing a 12-year-old in a stained orange jacket. Naruto stopped walking. "Okay, this is the boat thing again," he said. Hey, get up, all of you, get up, this is weird, Yoi." Nobody got up. "Tamari, tell them." "I'm not telling them anything," Tamari said, and her voice was wrecked. "I'm on my knees too, look at me. You're standing up. Emotionally, I'm on my knees." Naruto put both hands over his face and walked the rest of the way to the tower through 11,000 kneeling people at exactly his usual speed, complaining the entire time. And Sunagakure signed a permanent alliance with the Leaf. 11 days later, that had one unusual clause in it, in Gaara's own handwriting, which read, "In the event that the village hidden in the leaves is ever attacked, Sunagakure will not be asked." The Uchiha brothers met on ground Itachi picked, on a day Itachi picked, and he did it with a letter. It came to Konoha's gate by hawk with no seal on it. 4 lines. A place, an abandoned temple 3 days east on the border with the river behind it. A date. And then, bring him. I would like Sasuke to hear it from me, and I would like the Phoenix to be in the room, because I don't expect it to survive the telling, and I would prefer it be on purpose. Kakashi read it 4 times and said, "It's a trap." "It's a trap," Naruto agreed. "It's also true, Yoi." "How do you know that?" because he could have killed Sasuke in that hotel hallway, and he broke his wrist instead. Naruto folded the letter and put it in his jacket. Guys who want you dead don't aim for the wrist. They went east. The temple had lost its roof in some war nobody had bothered to name, and the rain was coming through it, because it was always raining wherever Itachi Uchiha stood. And Kasame Hoshigaki was waiting in the courtyard with Samahada off his back and the wrappings already coming loose. "He's inside," Kisame said, "which means the two of you have to deal with me first, and I've had 11 months to think about this conversation." "Then move, Yoi." "Not a chance." Kisame's grin got wider than a human mouth should manage. "You know how many chakra types this sword has eaten? 911, Kaja level, Biju level. I fed it a 3 tails once. It has never once found something it couldn't hold." Naruto's hands were in his pockets. "Itachi tell you not to?" Kisame paused. "He mentioned it." "Yeah, water style, great shark bullet. The technique came up out of the flooded courtyard in a shark of water 40 feet long, and it hit Naruto square and drove him back through the temple's outer wall. He came through the rubble board. Kasame was already inside his reach with Samahada up. The sword came down on Naruto's left shoulder and bit into it and started to drink, and Samahada shivered with pleasure the way it always did. And every scale on it went up. And then Samahada screamed. That's the word Sasuke used, and it's the only word that fits. The sword shrieked, a high grinding sound out of the mouths in its hide, and it tried to let go, and it couldn't, because it had bitten into something that didn't flow. Phoenix fire doesn't run in channels. It sits and burns in place. Samahada tried to draw it out, and instead, the fire came in, up the blade into the living thing inside the wrappings, and the fire found 911 other people's chakra stored in a body that had no right to hold it. It cleaned all of it out at once. The sword came apart in Kasame's hands. It went from a living blade to a husk to a spray of gray ash in under 2 seconds, and the wrappings fell in the water, and Kasame Hoshigaki stood in a flooded courtyard holding a handle. He looked at it. "Huh," he said. He did mention it. Then he came at Naruto with his bare hands, which is the last respectable thing Kasame Hoshigaki ever did. Water style, 5 sharks. Naruto's leg came apart, reformed gold and scaled, and the kick landed under Kisame's ribs and lifted 340 pounds of Kirakure's monster off the ground and put him through the temple's east wall and through the wall behind that and into the riverbank 40 yards out. Kisame got up. Both his legs worked. He came back out of the river. He got 11 feet. Crane talons. 4 talons went through him at the waist and out the other side, and the slash carried 100 feet through the wall behind him and opened a line in the hillside beyond it, and Kasame Hoshigaki came apart into 2 pieces that landed 6 feet apart in the shallows. The top half looked up at the sky. "Ah," he said with something like satisfaction. "There it is." Then nothing. Naruto stepped over him and walked into the temple with Sasuke behind him, and rain coming down through a roof that hadn't been there in 60 years. Itachi Uchiha was sitting on the stone base of a statue whose top half was gone, with his hands in his lap. He was worse than the hotel. He was much worse. His skin had gone the color of paper. There was blood on his lower lip and blood dried on his collar, and he'd stopped bothering to wipe it. And when he breathed, you could hear it. And his eyes were red, and they were also failing, and everybody in the room could see it. "Sasuke," Itachi said. Sasuke Uchiha's sword came out. "Wait, Yoi. Get out of my way." Wasn't gonna get in it. Naruto's hand stayed in his pockets. "Go ahead. But look at him first." Sasuke looked. He'd spent 8 years building a monster in his head. The monster in his head was 7 feet tall and had a hallway full of bodies behind it. And the man on the statue base in front of him weighed maybe 130 pounds and was holding onto the stone with one hand to stay upright. "You're sick," Sasuke said. "Yes." "How long?" "Since I was 13. Itachi's mouth moved into something that had been a smile once. "It runs in our family. It was going to be 4 more months, and then I was going to come to Konoha and stand in front of you and let you kill me because that was the plan, and the plan was the last thing I had." He looked past his brother. "And then a boy with blue fire took my greatest mistake out of your shoulder, and I have spent 11 months understanding that the plan was garbage." Sasuke's sword hand was shaking. "Fight me. I'll fight you," Itachi said. "I'll fight you and I'll lose, and I'd like to lose in a way that lets you keep something afterward, so I'm going to ask you to do it fast." Then he stood up, and it was on. It was a genuinely beautiful fight, and it lasted 3 minutes. Itachi threw everything. He threw a great fireball that took the temple's remaining columns down. He threw shuriken with wire and dropped a wall on his brother. He caught Sasuke in Tsukuyomi twice, and each time he broke it himself after 4 seconds because he wouldn't spend a full round on it. He put Sasuke on his back 3 times and got him up 3 times by kicking him in the ribs. And he was crying blood out of both eyes by the middle of it. And Sasuke Uchiha, for the first time in his life, saw all of it. Saw the pulled punches, saw the 4 openings his brother left him, saw a man aiming for a loss and doing it badly because he was too good to lose convincingly. "You're throwing it," Sasuke screamed at him. "You're throwing it! I'm out of time," Itachi said. Then he coughed, and what came out of him wasn't a mouthful. It was a lungful, and it went down the front of his cloak in a sheet. And he went to one knee in a flooded temple with his hand in the water and couldn't get up. Naruto Uzumaki took his hands out of his pockets. "All right, that's enough, Yoi. Stay out of this," Sasuke said. "Nope." He crossed the temple floor and knelt in the water in front of Itachi Uchiha, and Itachi looked up at him with red eyes that had 4 months left in them, and understood exactly what was about to happen, and said, with real panic in his voice for the first time in 11 years, "Don't. You've been dying since you were 13. Hold still, Yoi." He put both hands flat on Itachi's chest. The blue fire went in. It went into a body that had been eating itself for 8 years. There was a lung disease in there, with a name that 4 doctors in the world knew. And it had grown roots in both lungs and thrown seeds into the lining of his heart. And the fire looked at all of it and read it exactly the way it read a curse mark and a curse ritual and a stolen heart and a clay spore. Damage. Foreign. Itachi Uchiha's back arched. He made a sound like a man breaking. The blue came up out of his collar and out of his sleeves and out from under his eyes, and his lungs cleared. You could hear it, a wet, awful clearing, and then a breath that went all the way down for the first time since he was 14 years old. The blood on his lip turned to ash. The strain scarring around his optic nerves, 11 years of Manjikyo chewing his own eyes away, closed over and rebuilt. The Amaterasu burn on his left forearm, the one he'd given himself the day he sealed his own crow, went smooth. And then the fire kept going, because it wasn't finished, and it found the thing in his ribs, the place where his own technique had cracked something and it had knit crooked in 1993. And it fixed that too. Naruto sat back. Itachi Uchiha knelt in 3 inches of rainwater with his hands on his knees and took 11 breaths in a row that didn't hurt, and on the 8th one his face came apart. "No," he said. No, put it back. Not gonna do that, Yoi. I was supposed to die today." Itachi's hands came up and gripped his own hair. "Do you understand what you've done? I have been walking toward this afternoon for 8 years. It was the only clean thing left. He was supposed to kill me and take my eyes and go home a hero and hate a dead man. Itachi. And you've taken it. You've taken the one thing. Itachi." Sasuke Uchiha stood 11 feet away with his sword in the water. "What do you mean, go home a hero?" he said, silence in a roofless temple with rain coming down through it. Itachi looked at his brother, healthy, for the first time in his adult life. He had no plan for this. He had never once in 8 years of planning planned for this. So he told him. He told him all of it, kneeling in the water, in about 4 minutes, because there wasn't any way to make it longer without lying. The coup. The clan's plan to take Konoha by force. Danzo Shimura and the ultimatum, and the choice between a massacre and a civil war that would have pulled in Iwa and Kumo and killed 100,000 people. The night. His father kneeling and telling him to make it fast and take care of Sasuke. His mother's hand on his cheek. The one person he refused to kill, and the 8 years of pretending it was because that person was worthless. Madara. The man calling himself Madara. Waiting outside the compound. The deal, Sasuke listened to it standing up. When it was over, he was still standing up, and his sword was in the water by his foot, and he'd put both hands over his mouth like a man holding something in. you," he said. "I'm sorry. You let me hate you. It was the only inheritance I could leave you." Itachi's voice broke on the last word. "A reason to get up. I gave you a reason to get up every morning for 8 years, and I made it out of me because there wasn't anything else in the house." Sasuke Uchiha crossed the temple floor and hit his brother in the face. Then he grabbed the front of his cloak with both fists and hit him again. And then he stopped hitting him and just held the cloak and put his forehead against Itachi's collarbone and made a sound that Naruto Uzumaki got up and walked 20 feet away for. Because some things aren't yours to stand next to. The rain came down through the roof for a while. "You're going to have to come back," Sasuke said into his brother's shoulder. "You know that. You have to come back and stand in front of the Hokage and say all of it out loud. They'll execute me." "Hiruzen Sarutobi is alive," Sasuke said, "because that idiot flew through a barrier for him. Try guessing what the old man says no to these days." Which is when the swirl opened in the air behind them. It came out of nothing, a spiral sucking the rain into itself, and a man stepped out of it wearing a spiral mask with one hole in it, and he was saying in a voice that had a smile all through it, "Itachi, Itachi, Itachi, I gave you one afternoon and you've made a mess of mine." He stopped. He looked at Itachi Uchiha, standing up straight, breathing, with color in his face. He looked at Sasuke Uchiha standing next to him with his Sharingan up and his hand on his brother's arm. He looked at the courtyard behind them where Kisame Hoshigaki was lying in 2 pieces in a river, and Samehada was gray powder on the water. And then he looked at the third person in the temple, who had his hands in his pockets and was looking back at him with his head tilted a little, the way a man looks at a bug he hasn't decided about. "Hey," Naruto said, "you're the guy in the hat, Yoi." Obito Uchiha, who had walked through 11 wars and 2 Kage, and had never in his adult existence been in a room he couldn't leave whenever he liked, did the sum in his head, and the sum came out wrong in every column. Genjutsu doesn't hold in that nervous system. Kamui takes contact. Contact means being close enough to be touched, and that thing purges what has been put into a body, and there's a Zetsu grafted to half of mine. "Ah," he said. Naruto's arms came apart. Obito went into his own spiral so fast that the space where he'd been made a sound like a cork coming out, and the swirl snapped shut, and 190 years worth of plan changed its scale in one afternoon. Naruto's wings folded. He put his hands back in his pockets. "He's fast, Yoi. He's terrified," Itachi said, and there was something in his voice that hadn't been there in 8 years. "I've stood beside that man for 8 years, and I have never once heard him make that noise." They walked Itachi Uchiha into Konoha through the front gate 11 days later, with his hands unbound because Sasuke wouldn't allow otherwise, and the hearing took 4 hours, and Danzo Shimura spent 3 of them trying to have the room cleared, and the last one under arrest. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat through all of it with his hands folded and his eyes shut. At the end, he opened them and looked at a man he had known as a child, healthy, 22 years old, standing in front of him alive when every file in the building said otherwise. "I gave the order that made that night possible," Hiruzen said. "I gave it by doing nothing, while 3 of my advisors gave a 13-year-old a choice that wasn't one. You will not be executed. You will not be pardoned either, because a pardon says there was nothing to forgive, and there was a great deal." He set his pipe down. "You will serve this village for the rest of your life in the open, with your name and your face, and every year on that date you will stand in the Uchiha cemetery where people can see you doing it. That's the sentence." Itachi Uchiha bowed until his hair touched the floor. Danzo Shimura went to a cell and stayed there, and 11 months later he died in it of being 82, and nobody outside the building noticed. The rain came to Konoha on a morning in autumn with the leaves still on the trees. It came out of a clear sky, which is how they knew. 60 seconds of drizzle over the whole village, from the wall to the monument, and every drop of it was a receiver. And behind the drops came 6 bodies through 6 different gates. Pain of the hidden rain came for the Nine-Tails with a plan he'd used 11 times before. And the plan was to break the village first so that whatever lived in it would come outside. The Deva path landed on the northern wall. "Where is Naruto Uzumaki?" it said, to the first 4 Konoha shinobi it met, and then it killed them without waiting for the answer, and walked in. The animal path put a 100-foot centipede through the eastern market. The Ashura path opened the southern gate with a shoulder-mounted cannon and took the gatehouse and the 11 men in it off the map. The human path walked into the T&I building and put a hand on the head of a Chunin and read 4 years out of him in 9 seconds and left him with his mouth open on the floor. The Preta path stood in the plaza and ate 3 A-rank techniques and asked for more. The Naraka path set the king up in the training grounds and began repairing bodies as fast as Konoha could break them. Konoha held for 11 minutes. It held well. Kakashi Hatake took Animal Path down a street and lost him. Kurenai's Genjutsu bounced off. Guy broke both his own arms hitting Asura Path, and Asura Path stood back up. Shizune got 200 civilians into the north shelter and lost 14 doing it. Sakura Haruno held a triage line in the hospital courtyard with her sleeves rolled to the shoulder and her hands inside a man's chest, and she was shouting names, and she was very good at it. At minute 11, the Deva path went up. It rose 400 feet over the center of the village, and it put both hands out, and the whole village went silent because everybody's ears popped at once. Almighty push. The wave came down. 4 districts went flat. That's the plain description, and it's the accurate one. 1,100 buildings, the Eastern Market, the Merchant Quarter, 3 residential blocks, and the old Academy Annex came off their foundations in one push and went outward in a ring, and the ring went 2,000 feet. And it stopped at the Hokage Monument because the monument is a mountain. 22,000 tons of Konoha in the air at once. A water tower came off the roof of the waterworks with 11,000 gallons still in it, and it went over the ruins of the market with 200 people underneath it. Something blue came in from the east. It came in low and fast enough to leave a line in the dust cloud, and a wing 60 feet long came up under the tower and took the whole weight of it, 11,000 gallons, 40 tons of steel and water. And the wing beat that followed put it down in the river a quarter mile away without breaking it. Then the phoenix banked over the center of the village and screamed, and 9,000 people in shelters under the ground heard it through the rock and started crying because they knew what it was. Naruto Uzumaki came down in the middle of the ruined market and folded into a man. He looked around at it. He had bought a pair on this street once from a woman who couldn't look him in the face. "Ah," he said. The Deva path came down to 100 feet and hung there. "You're the Nine Tails." Naruto's hands went in his pockets. "You're the guy who did this. I'm the pain of a world that has never once been listened to. This village burned mine when I was a child. 3 of your shinobi killed my parents in front of me over a bowl of soup. 6 bodies, 1 voice, in perfect chorus from 6 positions across the village. I have come to bring you to the statue, and I have come to teach this place what it teaches everyone else. There is no lesson in words, only in pain. Yeah, I've had pain, Yoi." Naruto tilted his head. "It didn't teach me anything either. Mostly I just got hungry." "Then you built a god out of corpses," Naruto said. "I'm taking every one of them back." His arms came apart. He took them one at a time, and he took them in 6 different ways, and it took him 91 seconds. The animal path came first because it was the one making more. It stood on a rooftop and slammed both hands down, and a 100-foot centipede and a giant multi-headed dog came out of the seals, and the dog split every time it was hit. And by minute 4 of the invasion, there were 14 of them. Naruto went through the pack in a straight line without slowing down and killed the summoner instead. He came in at 110 feet a second and folded his wings, and the drop went through the rooftop and through 3 floors of the building and into the foundation. Phoenix brand. The talons landed on the animal path's chest. They went through it. They went through the floor under it and the floor under that, and the concussion took the whole building's north face off. And when the dust came down, Naruto was standing in a basement with a corpse on the end of his foot, and 14 dogs and 1 centipede coming apart into smoke behind him because the hand that made them had stopped existing. He crouched and pulled the receiver rods out of the corpse's spine and they burned to slag in his fist before he'd finished standing up. The Predapath found him in the street. "Absorption," it said, and put both hands out. "Whatever you," Naruto punched it in the face. Nothing to absorb. Just a fist coming in at a speed the human eye reports as an absence. And the Predapath's skull came apart against the road, and the body went 111 feet down the street and through the front of a noodle shop. "Yeah, that's the thing about absorption, Yoi," Naruto said, walking after it. "It's a chakra move." The human path came at his back with a hand out for his skull. He caught it by the wrist without turning around, and the fire went up its arm, and every single receiver in its body cooked at once. The whole nervous system of the thing lighting up blue from the inside, so that for 1 second you could see the rod pattern through its skin like a diagram. And then Naruto turned and put his other hand through its chest and took the heart out, and it went to gray ash between his fingers and blew away in the wind coming off the ruins. Kakashi Hatake, on a rooftop 2 streets over with a broken collarbone and 11 men behind him, watched a boy he tried to fail on a bell test kill 3 gods in 40 seconds. "Fall back to the hospital," he said. "All of you. This isn't ours anymore." The Asura path was the loudest and it lasted the longest, which is to say 11 seconds. It opened its chest and fired a missile array, 6 warheads at 1100 feet a second in a spread, and Naruto swept one wing forward and the spiral took all 6. Fujiazami. The warheads went into the vortex and stopped dead in the air like flies in oil and detonated inside it. And the blast went straight up in a column and blew a hole in the cloud cover, and Naruto walked out of the bottom of it and took the Asura Path's head off with the back edge of the same wing. The head went 400 feet and landed in the river. The Naraka Path tried to repair them. It got the king up. The enormous stone face rising out of the training ground with its mouth open, ready to give 3 bodies back the way it had given 1,000 bodies back over 11 years. And Naruto Uzumaki landed in front of it and put both hands on the stone jaw. "Nope, Yoi." The fire went into it. The king of hell came apart, not broken, cleaned. The technique that made it was written in a body, and Naruto's fire found the writing and treated it as rot, and the whole thing went gray from the mouth outward and came down as sand, and the Naraka Path put a hand up to its own face as its half of the ritual came off, and Naruto took the top of its head off with a talon on the way past, which left one. The Deva Path came down out of the sky into the ruins of the Eastern Market and landed on the flattened street, and for the first time in 11 years it was alone. "You've killed 5, it said. 6 in a second, Yoi. You don't understand what you've broken. I am the only thing holding the world still. Do you know what happens when?" And then it did the thing it had been saving, because it was afraid, and it had 180 seconds of cooldown burned, and it went for the big one anyway. Chibaku Tensei. A black sphere went up out of its palm and hung over Konoha at 1,000 feet, and the village started coming apart upward, everything. Roof tiles, whole walls, trees, the river's water, 400 tons of rubble, and 11 people who hadn't gotten under cover, all of it lifting off the ground and drawn up into a growing ball of the village's own corpse, and the ball was already 200 feet across and gaining. Naruto looked up at it. Then he went up through the debris stream, and he grew as he went. From a man to a shape to a phoenix, 140 feet from wingtip to wingtip, blue and gold, wings hammering hard enough to blow the rising rubble back down into the streets. And he hit the sphere from below with both talons and closed them on it. Hibashira. The pillar of fire went up through the middle of the Chibaku Tensei from the inside. The sphere came apart. 400 tons of Konoha rained back down over the village, and the 11 people who had been inside it came down with it. And 11 blue arcs of fire went out of the phoenix's wings and caught every single one of them in the air and set them on their feet in the street. And one of them was a 9-year-old girl who threw up on her own shoes and then started laughing. The phoenix came down on the flattened market and folded into a boy. The Deva Path had backed up 11 steps. "How?" it said, and its voice, for the first time in the whole invasion, came out of one throat instead of 6. "You got your body from somebody who's not in it," Naruto said, and he walked toward it, and his hands were in his pockets. That's all this ever was, Yoi. You're a man wearing dead people because you're too scared to come outside. He took the Deva Path's face in one hand and set it down on the road and put a talon through its chest and held it there while the fire ran the receiver rods to slag under its skin. Then he stood up in the middle of 1,100 flattened buildings and turned east and said, "All right, where are you, Yoi?" He found the tower 10 miles out in the woods, in the rain, on the day's last light, because Conan came out of the sky in a spiral of paper to stop him, and he flew straight through her without hurting her, and she couldn't stop him at all. Nagato of the Rain sat in a black machine with 6 rods in his back and legs that hadn't held his weight in 11 years, and his hair was white, and he weighed 80 pounds, and he watched a boy walk in through a hole hewn in the wall. Conan came in behind him with paper in both hands. "Don't," Naruto said, without turning. "I'm not gonna touch him yet, Yoi." "Yet," Nagato said. "Yet." They looked at each other for a while, a boy and a thing in a machine. "Say it then." Nagato's voice came out like paper tearing. "Say the speech. Every one of them has a speech. You'll tell me I'm wrong. You'll tell me pain isn't the only teacher and that people can change. And then you'll kill me. And you'll go home to a village that will build a statue of you. And in 40 years, someone from your village will do to a child in Amegakure exactly what was done to me. And there will be nobody to see it." "Probably," Naruto said. Nagato's eyes moved. "I ate out of a bin till I was 7, Naruto said. "The village you flattened today shut every door in it on me for 7 years. I've had a bear's hand through my chest. My neck broke on a training ground. A friend put lightning through my heart, and about 1,100 people have stabbed me since," he shrugged. "So you're right. Pain's a teacher. It taught me exactly one thing, and it took 11 years to learn it, Yoi. Which is that it hurts." Naruto's hands came out of his pockets. "That's it. That's all it's got. Everything after that, you added yourself." He crossed the room. Conan moved and Nagato said, "Stop," and she stopped. Naruto reached behind Nagato of the Rain and took the rods out of his back, 6 of them, one at a time, and each one came out of a socket that had been holding for 11 years, and each one went to slag in his hand and dripped on the floor. Then he put both palms flat on Nagato's thighs. "What are you?" "Hold still, Yoi." The blue fire went in. It went into 11 years of atrophy and 40 years of a body that had been failing since he was a child. And it went into the Gedo statue's chakra drain and the rod scarring and the shredded muscle in his back. And it burned every bit of it out as damage. And the legs of Nagato of the Rain filled out under his own hands. He screamed. Conan dropped her paper. It took 9 seconds. At the end of it, there was a man in his early 30s sitting in a broken machine with red hair going back to red at the roots, with weight on him, with hands that worked, and the machine wasn't holding him up anymore. He was just sitting in it. Naruto stepped back. "Stand up," he said. "I can't." "You can, Yoi." Naruto put a foot on the floor. He stood up in a tower in the rain for the first time since he was 12 years old, and he got about 4 seconds of it before his knees went, and Conan caught him, and the two of them went down on the floor together. And Conan of the Rain, who had folded paper over her own heart for 11 years to keep from feeling anything at all, held onto him with both arms and shook. "Why?" Nagato said into her shoulder. "'Cause killing you's easy," Naruto said. "You've been trying to die for 11 years, man. That's not a punishment, that's a favor." He turned toward the hole in the wall. "You broke about 1,000 houses today, and you killed 140 of my people. So you can walk, on legs, to every one of those funerals. And then you can go home to Amegakure and be the guy who fixes it, instead of the guy who threatens it. And if you don't, I'll come back and it'll take me 11 minutes. He stopped in the doorway. "Also, you got a rebirth in there, right? The one that gives lives back." Nagato's head came up. "How do you know about?" "Don't use it." Naruto's hands went into his pockets. "You died doing it, and I'm already going, Yoi." He flew home over 10 miles of wet forest, and he landed in the ruins of Konoha at full dark, and he spread his wings over 4 flattened districts with 11,000 people standing in the streets watching. Phoenix Pyre Apple. The fire came down over the whole village, It landed on 911 wounded, and every one of them got up. It landed on Guy's broken arms and Kakashi's collarbone and a Chunin with a spear through his hip. It landed on the 140 who had died in the 11 minutes of the invasion, and 81 of them, the fresh ones, the ones the ground hadn't finished taking, sat up in a row on the hospital courtyard stones in front of Sakura Haruno, who had her hands in a man's chest and stayed there for another 9 seconds because her arms had stopped taking instructions. 59 stayed gone. He'd been too slow for 59, and he never once in his life pretended otherwise. Konoha buried 59 people that week, and Nagato of Amegakure stood at every single funeral on his own legs at the back with his head bare and got spat on twice and stayed anyway. And on the 7th morning, in a street of flattened buildings in the Eastern Market where the merchants were rebuilding out of donated lumber, Naruto Uzumaki came walking through with his hands in his pockets on his way to breakfast. They stopped working. All of them. The greengrocer who had held out a pear 5 years ago, the fishmonger, the man from the noodle shop with his front wall in a pile, the woman who had run the dry goods stall for 30 years and had shut her door on a starving 7-year-old more times than she could count. They came out from behind their tables and stood in the middle of the street with their hands empty and their heads down. Nobody said anything. Nobody was going to be able to. Naruto stopped. He looked at them for a while. "It's a nice morning," he said. "Somebody sell me something, Yoi." The seal held for 11 years, and it came apart on the 8th of the 10th month, at night, and it came apart because of something nobody had planned for. It had never been designed to hold two things. Minato Namikaze had written a seal to cage the 9-tailed fox in the belly of a newborn, and the formula was elegant, and it accounted for everything a Biju could do. Chakra pressure, malice, the host's emotional state, the slow bleed of tails. What the formula couldn't account for was that at 7 years old, that newborn would swallow something out of a stone chest under the forest of death and start growing a second fire in the same body, and that for 11 years the two of them would sit in the same chest and expand. Something had to go, and it was the ink. He was asleep when it happened. He woke up in his own mindscape, standing ankle deep in water, which was normal, in front of a gate that was hanging open, which was not. Kurama came out of it. Not slow. He came out at a run, 1,000 feet of hate on 4 legs, the way he'd come out at Kushina Uzumaki and at Mito Uzumaki, and at a village 19 years ago, and the water went out from under him in a wall, and the whole cavern of Naruto's head shook so hard that 11 miles away in the real world, a seismograph in Suna drew a line. 11 years, Kurama roared. 11 years in a box behind a boy who eats fruit off the ground and calls himself a person. I have been chained inside 4 wombs and a gourd and a boy, and I am done. I'm going to take your body apart from the inside and walk out of it. And then I'm going to walk to that village and Naruto put his hands in his pockets. Nothing gets caged in my body, Yoi. Not even you. The fox stopped. It stopped about 40 feet out with one paw up because the sentence had gone into it sideways and come out somewhere unexpected. What? Come here. What did you? I said, come here, Naruto said. And he started walking toward it, and the water didn't move around him at all. You've been in a cage since before my grandmother was born. Mito, then my mom, then me. 3 seals, and every one of them was written by somebody who thought of you as a weapon that leaks. He kept walking, and every time somebody put you in one, you got angrier. And every time you got angrier, they made the next cage tighter, and you've been going around that loop for 1,000 years and calling it your personality. I am hate. You're a wound, Yoi. He walked right up to the fox's front paw, which was the size of a house, and he put his hand flat on it. Kurama's whole body locked. Don't, he said. Don't you dare. The blue fire went in. It went in, and it did what it did, which is the only thing it knows how to do. And the thing about Kurama of the 9 Tails is that almost nothing in him was originally his. The fire found Madara Uchiha's Sharingan control from 90 years ago, still hooked into the base of his skull, an old command line waiting to be used. It burned it out. It found Hashirama Senju's wood restraints, grown into his ribs in 1917 and never removed. Burned them out. It found 4 separate seals, layered, one on top of another. Mitos, Kushinas, Minatos, and one older thing under all of them that had been written by a man with a staff and 9 circles behind him. It found a chakra chain wrapped 9 times around his throat that Kushina Uzumaki had put there while she was dying and had never been able to take back. It found 19 years of the Gedo statue's pull, aimed at him from 400 miles away, gripping. It found 1,000 years of being used, written into a body in the actual physical language of seals, layer over layer over layer, and it read every single line of it as an infection. Kurama screamed. It was different from Hidan's scream and different from Orochimaru's. It was the sound of something that has been holding a fist closed for 1,000 years, finding out that the hand can open. The ink came off him. The black lines of 4 seals peeled and whitened and went to ash. The chain around his throat came apart, link by link, and each link burned. The wood in his ribs turned to living brown and put out a leaf and fell off. The Sharingan command at the back of his skull went gray and burned out like a wet match. Exactly the way a curse mark had done in a clearing in the Forest of Death when Naruto was 12. And under all of it, there was something the shape of a fox that had been so long buried under other people's writing that it had forgotten what it looked like. Kurama came down onto his belly in the water. He lay there for a long time with his head on his front legs, and his eyes were shut, and he was breathing, and the mindscape was completely still. "It's gone," he said. Yeah, his eye, in the back of my head. I've felt it since 1897, every day, waiting for someone to pick it up and use it. His claws flexed against the water. "It's gone." Yeah, Kurama opened one eye. "You didn't ask me for anything." "Wasn't gonna, Yoi. Everybody asks. Every one of them. Mito bargained, Kushina bargained, the Uchiha ordered, the man in the mask ordered." The fox's lip curled. "You put your hand on me and cleaned me out, and you haven't asked for a single." "Do you want breakfast?" "What? I'm gonna be awake in about a minute, and I'm gonna go get breakfast," Naruto said. "You've been eating what I eat for 11 years, and you've never once said what you like, so..." He shrugged. "What do you like, Yoi?" Kurama of the 9 tails lay in the water in a boy's head and looked at him. "Beef," he said. "Cool. Kurama." "My name." The fox's eye closed again. "It's Kurama. The sage gave it to me. Nobody's used it in 900 years. Naruto grinned for maybe the 4th time in the whole story. "Nice to meet you, Kurama. Yoi." Something else moved in the wreckage of the seal. It came out of the ink that hadn't finished burning, and it was a man in a white coat with blonde hair and a face Naruto had seen on a mountain his whole life, and it stood there in the water looking at both of them with an expression that took 30 seconds to arrange itself. "I left a piece of myself in the formula," Minato Namikaze said, "to meet you when it broke. I assumed I'd be meeting a 16-year-old boy with the 9 tails halfway out in about 9 seconds to live." He looked at the fox lying on the floor with its eyes shut. "This isn't the scenario I wrote for." "Yeah, that happens a lot around me, Yoi." Minato laughed once wetly. "Naruto, I put this in you. Your mother and I both. We made a decision about your entire life in about 90 seconds. And then we died and left you holding it. And I've had 11 years of nothing in here to think about whether that was..." "Dad," Minato stopped. "I'm good," Naruto said. "You don't have to say that." "I know, I'm saying it because it's true." Naruto's hands were in his pockets. "It was bad for a while, then it wasn't. Then I got a team and an old man in a hat and a guy with a book and a girl who grabs my sleeve and a fox." He tilted his head at the enormous shape on the floor. "You didn't leave me with nothing. You left me with a village, and it was awful at me for 7 years, and then it wasn't, and now it's mine." He shrugged. "So you can put it down. It's fine. Go on, Yoi." Minato Namikaze put both hands over his face for a second. Then he came across the water and hugged his son, and he lasted about 4 seconds before the chakra construct started coming apart at the edges. And the last thing he said, with his chin on Naruto's shoulder, was, "Your mother would have picked you up and swung you around, and she would have been so loud about it." "Yeah? You have no idea." And he was gone. Naruto Uzumaki woke up in his own apartment at 4 in the morning with tears on his face and a fox in his chest. And he lay there for a while. Then he got up and went outside and stood on the roof and said, "Hey, want to try something?" "Try what?" said a voice in his head, for the first time out loud instead of behind bars. "Just lean on me a little, Yoi." Kurama leaned. The sky over Konoha changed color. The blue fire came up off Naruto Uzumaki the way it always did, and then something gold came up underneath it and through it, and the two of them married in the air the way two techniques do when they were always going to. Gold over blue. The whole village lit from above at 4 in the morning, and 9,000 people came out of their houses in their night clothes and stood in the streets looking up. 6 wings came out of his back. Not 2, 6 in 3 pairs, each one gold shot and burning cold, and they went out 140 feet. And Naruto Uzumaki lifted off a roof in Konoha and went up 4,000 feet with a fox's chakra layered under a phoenix's fire. "QB Phoenix mode," Kurama said, sounding almost embarrassed about it. "It needs a name. Things like this need names." "Yeah, all right, Yoi." He came down on the mountain range north of the village to test it, and he tested it by hitting a peak. The peak went. The mountain that had stood north of Konoha for 11,000 years lost its top 200 feet, and the range's whole skyline changed shape overnight. And the Land of Fire's cartography office spent 4 months arguing about whether to redraw the map before they redrew the map. The Fourth Great Shinobi War lasted 1 day. It started because Obito Uchiha, who had run out of a temple with rain on his mask, and had spent 11 months since then in a cave making calls he'd never planned to make, made a decision that 190 years of patience couldn't survive. He moved early. He declared it at a Kage summit through a Zetsu clone, and he declared it because the alternative was waiting while a boy with blue fire got closer to him, and he brought Kabuto's notes and Kabuto's coffins and 100,000 Zetsu out of the ground. And he put 10,000 reanimated shinobi on the field at dawn on the western plain of the Land of Lightning. 10,000. Every dead name in every bingo book from 4 wars. 7 former Kage, the 7 swordsmen, the 4th Raikage's brother. Rows of them in the dawn light, gray-skinned with black cracks, with the paper strips at the base of their skulls fluttering in the wind, and the allied shinobi forces, 80,000 men and women in one uniform for the first time in history, stood on the ridge above and looked down at their own dead grandparents. Somebody in the 4th Division threw up. The Raikage was halfway through a speech about holding the line when a shadow went over the whole army. It went over 80,000 people at once. And the light changed, and every single head on that ridge turned up, and what they saw was a phoenix the size of a hillside going out over the plain. Gold over blue, 6 wings, a tail of fire 400 feet long, and Naruto Uzumaki's voice came down from 900 feet and reached the whole army, because at that scale you don't shout, you just talk. "Hey," he said, "nobody move, Yoi, this bit's mine." Then the 6 wings came down at once. It was a wall. That's how the survivors described it, all 80,000 of them, and 80,000 people describing the same thing the same way, is why the story never got exaggerated afterward. There was nothing to add. A wall of blue and gold fire came off 6 wings and rolled across the western plain of the Land of Lightning at the speed of weather, 400 feet high, 11 miles wide, and it went over 10,000 reanimated corpses in 11 seconds. It didn't burn them. The paper strips in their skulls whitened and peeled. The black lines in their gray skin faded out. 10,000 faces that had been snarling stopped snarling. And Edo Tensei, a technique that binds a soul out of the pure world into a dirt body and cannot be broken by anything except the caster's death, came apart in every one of them at the same time, because the fire went over the formula and read the formula as an infection in a body. 7 Kage went to dust. The 7 swordsmen went to dust. Every name in every book went to dust in 11 seconds, and the wind took it east. And in the middle of it, 400 yards out on the plain, Madara Uchiha, brought back whole, standing in the front rank, laughing at the whole thing, because he'd been looking forward to this morning for a century, felt the wall roll over him and felt the reanimation script come off his own spine. He looked down at himself. He was still standing. His flesh was still flesh. Kabuto had done something to him that the others hadn't gotten, a full body, a complete return, anchored in his own recovered corpse instead of a dirt shell. "Oh," Madara said, and his grin came back. "Oh, I like this." Behind him, the last of 10,000 men blew away over the grass. 80,000 allied shinobi stood on a ridge with their weapons up and nothing to hit. A jonin from Kumo in the third rank sat down on the ground and put his forehead on his own knees. A Suna girl of 19 started laughing and couldn't stop for 4 minutes. The fourth Raikage, mid-sentence, with one arm out, said the rest of the sentence anyway because he'd committed to it, and then said, "Or that." Onoki of Iwa, floating 11 feet off the ridge, said, "I fought his grandfather's generation. I wanted on the record that I fought his grandfather's generation and they were nothing like this." And then the sky went white because Obito Uchiha had watched his entire army evaporate in 11 seconds and had gone straight to the end of his plan. The Gedo statue came up out of the ground 4 miles east. It came up with 7 Biju already sealed into it, and it came up screaming. And Obito Uchiha stood on its shoulder with the mask gone, and 1 Rinnegan and 1 Sharingan, and a spiral scar down half his face. And he put both hands together. The statue took a shape. The 10 tails stood up on the plain. 100 stories of white body and 1 eye and 10 tails, the thing that had been in the moon and under the ground and in 11 prophecies. And it stood up and howled, and the sound broke every window in the land of lightning. "You don't understand what this world is," Obito shouted down at a phoenix. "You don't understand what it costs, what it takes from people, what it did to." "Rin," Naruto said. Obito stopped. "Itachi told me, Yoi." The phoenix hung in the air at 1,100 feet, and its voice came down flat and level. "Girl named Rin. Kumo made her a bomb, and your best friend put a hand through her chest, and you've been building a dream ever since, so it never happened." A pause. "That's real. That's a real thing that happened to a real kid, and it's the worst thing I've heard all year." Then, "But you want to put 900 million people to sleep in a lie so you don't have to be sad." The wings came back. "So we're gonna fight, Yoi." The 10 tails threw a tail. It came around like a falling tower, and it caught the phoenix across the body at 400 miles an hour and put him through a mountain. Actually through in one side and out the other. And the mountain came down behind him in a slide that took 11 square miles of forest with it. He came out of the rubble and went straight back up. What followed on that plain is the reason the Fourth Great Shinobi War has a whole month of holidays attached to it in 5 countries. Obito took the 10 tails into a shape with legs and ran it at the allied army, and Naruto met it in the air and turned it. He turned 100 stories of Biju in mid-charge by getting under its front leg with 3 wings and lifting, and it went over on its side and flattened 400 acres. It fired a tailed beast ball. It fired 11 of them, each one the size of a house, and they came at the ridge where 80,000 people were standing. And Naruto Uzumaki caught the first one with both talons and threw it back down the 10 tails' own throat, and caught the second and the third and the fourth, and each throw was harder than the last. And the 11th he simply flew through with his wings folded, and it came apart around him, and the fire put him back together on the far side. Obito pulled the 10 tails into the sky and made it a tree. "Infinite Tsukuyomi," he screamed, and the eye opened on the moon. The technique fired. It went out over the whole world. Every living human being with eyes looked up, and 80,000 shinobi on a ridge in the land of lightning felt the genjutsu come down on them like water closing over a head. And the strongest technique in the history of the world took the entire allied army in 1 second and put them in a dream. It took Naruto Uzumaki too, for about 1/3 of a second. Then it came back out of him. That's the thing nobody could ever properly explain, and it had been true since he was 12 years old in a hotel corridor with Itachi Uchiha's Tsukuyomi bouncing off his optic nerve. A genjutsu is something put into a nervous system from outside, and his fire had never once in 11 years let one stay. The infinite Tsukuyomi went into him, and his fire read it as rot and cleaned it out. And then, because he was already going, and because Kurama was leaning on him, and because at that scale his fire didn't stop at his own skin, it kept going. The blue and gold came off him in a wave and went out across 11 miles of ridgeline. Shiranui. 80,000 people woke up. They woke up standing, mid-dream. with roots coming out of the ground toward their feet, and a moon with an eye in it overhead. And the roots went gray and came apart, and the second wave of the wall rolled up into the sky and hit the moon's reflection, and the eye closed. The strongest technique in the history of the world lasted 9 seconds. Obito Uchiha stood on the head of a 100-story tree and watched 190 years of work fail in front of 80,000 witnesses. Azure Arc. The phoenix came out of the sun with 6 wings folded flat. It hit the 10 tails between the eye and the crown of the head at a speed that left a white line 11 miles long in the sky behind it. And the impact drove 100 stories of divine tree down into the plain and through the plain and 40 feet into the bedrock. And the shockwave went out in a ring and knocked 80,000 people flat on a ridge 4 miles away. And the plain of the land of lightning has a lake in it now that they named after nothing because nobody could agree. Obito came off the head and hit the ground. He got up. He had one arm and both eyes, and he got up. And Naruto Uzumaki landed in front of him as a man, with his hands in his pockets. And instead of killing him, he said, "Sasuke." Sasuke Uchiha came down the crater wall. He'd been on that ridge with everybody else, and he'd been in the dream for 9 seconds. And he had seen in those 9 seconds his whole family alive at a dinner table, and he had come out of it with his jaw locked. "You gave him that," he said to Obito. "You stood outside my compound and gave my brother a choice between his family and 100,000 people, and then you let him carry it for 8 years, and you called it useful." Obito Uchiha looked at 2 Uchiha and a phoenix. "Itachi's alive." "Itachi's a jonin," Sasuke said. "He teaches the Academy's Genjutsu module on Wednesdays." Obito Uchiha started laughing, and it came out of him wrong, and it went on for 11 seconds and turned into something else in the middle. Then he sat down in the crater. "I've been asleep since I was 13, he said. "That's the whole thing. Everybody wakes up eventually, and I just..." He looked at his own hand. "The statue has 7 of them in it. There's a chain of seals in my chest. If I pull it out myself, it'll take the 10 tails out of the world, and it'll take me too. And I've been carrying it for 11 years as a threat, and I never once thought about using it as anything else." "Then use it," Naruto said. "Will you tell him something for me?" Obito's head came up. "Kakashi, will you tell him yourself, Yoi? He's on the ridge. It's 4 miles. You've got legs." Obito Uchiha walked 4 miles across a broken plain in front of 80,000 people and said something to Kakashi Hatake that nobody else heard. And Kakashi Hatake stood there with his hand over his own mouth. And then Obito walked back down into the crater and pulled the chain out of his own chest. It took the 10 tails apart. 7 Biju came out of the ruin of the Gedo statue and went out over the plain in 7 colors, and they scattered to 7 directions. And the 8 tails, host on the ridge, sat down and cried into his own hands. Obito Uchiha died on his back on a broken plain, looking up at a sky with nothing in it. And the last thing he said was a girl's name. And Kakashi Hatake put him in the ground himself with his own hands and would not let anyone help, which left one man standing in the crater. Madara Uchiha had watched all of it with his arms folded, and he'd been having a wonderful morning. "You know," he said, "I came back for a war. And in 1 hour, you've taken away my army, my puppet, my dream, and my 10 tails. And I want you to understand that I have never had this much fun." "Cool, Yoi." Madara, Onoki's voice from 1,100 feet up. "I killed you. You watched me die, Onoki, which is a different thing." Madara didn't look at him. His eyes were on the boy in the crater. "You, 9 tails, come here." Naruto came. Madara Uchiha fought Naruto Uzumaki for 19 minutes. And it is the best fight anybody on that plain ever saw, and 80,000 people stopped fighting to watch it. And what follows is a compression, because the full account fills a book. He opened with Susanoo, and it was the perfect one. 140 feet of blue armor with 4 arms and 4 swords, standing over the crater, and it came down on the phoenix. And the phoenix caught the first sword in both talons, and the ground under both of them went to gravel. He called meteors. 2 of them out of the sky, Tengai Shinsei, each one a quarter mile across and coming down on the allied ridge where 80,000 people stood. Naruto Uzumaki went up and got both of them. He got the first with 3 wings and turned it. He got the second by flying into it, and then out the far side of it, and then under it, and then he pushed, and the second meteor changed course by 11 degrees and came down on the empty plain instead of on 80,000 people. And the impact took the top off a mountain range and put a dust cloud into the sky that gave 4 countries an orange sunset for a month. Then he got back under the first one and threw it. He threw a 1/4 mile of rock at Madara Uchiha's perfect Susanoo, and the Susanoo caught it with 4 arms and held it for 11 seconds and then came apart at the shoulders. Madara came out of the wreck of his own armor with his hair on fire and both Rinnegan's spinning, and he was still grinning. Limbo, he said. 4 shadows came off him. They were the best thing he had. Nobody could see them. Nobody in 1100 years had ever been able to see them. They existed a half step out of the world, and they had killed 40 men who never knew what hit them. And 4 of them closed on Naruto Uzumaki from 4 directions at once. The fire burned them. That's all. Naruto Uzumaki's fire had spent 11 years treating anything that came into him from outside as an infection. And it turned out that a shadow of a man wasn't an exception. All 4 Limbo clones caught fire the instant they touched him. Blue and gold running up shapes nobody else could see, so that for 1 second 80,000 people saw 4 burning outlines standing around a boy in a crater, and they came apart, and Madara Uchiha felt 4 pieces of himself die in 4 different places. He stopped grinning. "What are you?" he said. Naruto Uzumaki's hands came out of his pockets. "Everything you are is something I can burn out of a body, Yoi." Madara went for the last thing he had. He'd taken Hashirama's cells 11 decades ago and grown them into his own chest. And he had 1 eye left in reserve and a technique that turns a man into the sage's shadow, and he started making the seals for it. He got 3 of them. Phoenix Rashuriken. It came out of Naruto's right hand as a disc 4 feet across, 4 blades of turning feathers, cold enough that the air around it went to frost in a 100-degree crater, and he threw it at 70 feet. It took Madara Uchiha's arms off at the shoulders and went through his chest and out his back and kept going. And it cut a line through the crater wall and 1,100 yards of plain behind it. And the line is still there. Madara went down on his knees. The wounds tried to close. Hashirama Senju's cells fired in his chest, the same cells that had let him regrow a torso twice. And the holes looked at all that regeneration and stayed open, edges glowing blue, because Naruto Uzumaki's fire decides what heals. "Ah," Madara said, looking down at himself. "That's the trick then. That's the hole." Naruto walked over and put a hand through his chest and took his heart out. He held it up. Madara Uchiha, who had built 190 years around never being finished, got 4 seconds of watching his own heart turn to gray ash in a boy's fist, and the ash went out across the crater in the wind. Then Naruto put his other hand on the man's forehead and burned the Hashirama cells out of him and the Rinnegan out of him, and the last of Kabuto's anchor out of the base of his skull, so that nothing was left in that body that anybody could ever pick up and use again. Madara Uchiha went down into the dirt of the plain and stayed there. 80,000 people on a ridge made no sound whatsoever, and then the ground turned white. She came up out of the crater floor in a rush of white flesh and horns, because Madara Uchiha had been carrying her for a century, and she had been waiting for him to be almost dead. And Kaguya Otsutsuki stood up on the plain of the land of lightning, with 3 eyes and 100,000 years behind her, and looked at the world she'd planted. "My chakra," she said. "All of it. Wandering around in insects." Then she raised one hand and 11 square miles of plain became a sea of boiling acid, and 400 allied shinobi in the forward positions died in 9 seconds, and she opened a hole in the sky and stepped through it into a place made of ice. Naruto Uzumaki went through the hole after her. The last fight of the 4th Great Shinobi War took place across 6 dimensions in 11 minutes, and only 2 people saw any of it. And one of them was Naruto, and the other was Kaguya. So the account is thin. Here is what is known. She threw him into a dimension of gravity and he came out of it. She threw him into a desert with a sun that boiled his skin off, and he came out of that too, walking, with his skin already back. She put her Byakugan on him and read every tenketsu in his body, and found the fire and had no name for it. She hit him with an all-killing ash bone, a rib out of her own body thrown as a spear which turns any living thing it touches to dust at the cellular level. And it went through his chest and he turned to dust from the ribs outward and got about a third of the way through it before the blue and gold came up out of what was left of him and put it back. He caught the second rib out of the air and broke it. "That's a good one, Yoi," he said. "You've got one thing wrong with it though. Which is, it's something you put in a body." And she understood right then, in 11 ice dimensions and 100,000 years of memory, exactly what she was standing in front of. She was a woman who had made herself immortal by eating a fruit off a tree. Everything she was, the horns, the third eye, the ash bones, the expansion, the whole 100,000-year machine of her, was a foreign thing installed in a body that had once belonged to an ordinary person, and it was written in her the way a curse mark is written in a shoulder. Kaguya Otsutsuki tried to run. She opened 4 holes at once, and Naruto Uzumaki went through the 4th one before it closed and came out into a dimension of nothing but sky and caught her by the throat in midair. And she was as strong as anything in the world, and it made no difference at all. And 6 wings came out of his back, gold over blue, and wrapped forward around both of them like a closing hand. Hibashira. The pillar went up through the middle of Kaguya Otsutsuki from her feet to the crown of her horns, and it held her in the air, and the fire went into her, and it cleaned her out. The horns came off first. They went gray at the base and crumbled. The third eye went white and closed and stayed closed. The ash bones in her spine turned to ordinary bone, the tree that grew out of her back, and the chakra that hadn't been hers before she ate it, and every single thing that 100,000 years had installed in a woman's body came off her in sheets and went to ash in the wind of a dimension with nothing in it but sky. What was left at the end of it was a woman. She was tall and pale, and she had 2 eyes and long white hair, and she looked, for about 1 second, exactly like somebody's mother. "Oh," Kaguya said. Then she died, because a body 100,000 years old can't hold up its own weight without the thing that had been holding it, and she came apart into ordinary dust and it went out across the sky. Naruto Uzumaki stood in a dimension with nothing in it and put his hands in his pockets and said, "Kurama, how do we get home, Yoi?" "I have absolutely no idea." "Huh." It took him 40 minutes. He came out of a hole in the sky over the western plain of the Land of Lightning at 4 in the afternoon on the same day the war started, and 80,000 people were still standing on that ridge because nobody had been able to make themselves leave. He came down in front of them and folded up into a boy in a wrecked orange jacket. The 4th Raikage, who had lost an arm that morning and had it put back by a wing sweep at noon, looked at him. "Is it over?" he said. "Yeah, Yoi." "All of it?" "All of it." Naruto scratched the back of his neck. "There's a bunch of hurt people out there. Give me a minute." He went up 1,100 feet over the plain and spread 6 wings over 80,000 allied shinobi and 400 dead in the forward positions and 11,000 wounded on 11 miles of ridge. Phoenix Pyreapple. It came down blue and gold across the entire western plain of the Land of Lightning, and it is the largest single technique ever recorded by any village, and 11,000 people got up off stretchers, and 311 of the 400 who had died in Kaguya's acid sat up in the mud and looked at their own hands. 89 stayed gone. He knew all 89 of their names by the end of the week. He wrote them down himself, and he went to 9 funerals in 4 countries, and he never once said that he had saved anybody. The war ended in 1 day, and the world spent 11 years arguing about what to do about it. They tried to give him things. That was the immediate problem. The Land of Lightning offered him a province. Kumo offered him a village. The daimyo of the Land of Fire had a medal made that weighed 4 pounds, and Naruto Uzumaki accepted it and then left it on a bench. The Kage summit that followed the war spent 2 full days trying to draft a treaty clause about him, and finally gave up and wrote 1 line, which every one of the 5 signed, and which is still in force. In the matter of Naruto Uzumaki, all 5 villages agree to ask him nicely. Kirigakure went to update the bingo book and found that there was nothing to update, so they left the page as it was and put a stamp across the corner that read resolved. He didn't explain himself. Ever. That was the thing that drove historians mad for a century. 4 separate scholars came to Konoha to interview him about the fruit, the cavern, the carved walls, the tree with the ruined fruit on the ceiling, and every one of them got the same 40-minute conversation about ramen and left with nothing. The only person he ever told the whole story to was Hiruzen Sarutobi on a bench in the autumn, 8 weeks after the war. The old man listened to all of it. The 11 days on fountain water, the fence, the fall, the 9 circles carved in stone, the blue pineapple that tasted like a house fire, a 7-year-old on his elbows on a floor. When it was done, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat with his hands on his knees for a long time. 11 days, he said. Yeah. I signed your stipend myself, every month. I remember doing it. Money's fine, Naruto said. Doors were the problem, Yoi. Hiruzen Sarutobi wept on a bench in the autumn. An 80-year-old man with a hat in his lap, and Naruto Uzumaki sat next to him with his hands in his pockets and let him do it. Because at some point in the last 11 years he'd learned that sitting next to somebody is most of the job. Then the old man wiped his face and put the hat on the bench between them. I've had this for 38 years, he said, counting the interruption. I've handed it away twice and got it back twice, and both times it cost me somebody I loved. I would like, once before I go, to hand it to somebody and have it stay handed. Naruto looked at it. It come with a desk, Yoi. It comes with a village. Naruto thought about that for a while, a whole minute, on a bench in the leaves. Then he picked up the hat and turned it over in his hands. Can I still fly around? You'd better, Hiruzen said. It's most of our foreign policy. Naruto Uzumaki became 6th Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves at 18, and the ceremony was held on the roof of the academy because the tower balcony wouldn't hold everybody, and 11,000 people came, and he was late. Sakura Haruno hit him on the arm when he arrived. You're the Hokage, she hissed. You're the Hokage, and you're 40 minutes. There was a cat, Yoi. Kakashi says that. Kakashi taught me everything I know. Kakashi Hatake, 4 feet away with a book he wasn't reading, said, "That's the nicest thing anybody said to me all decade, and I hate the context." Sasuke Uchiha stood at the back with his brother. Itachi was 23 and he had weight on him, and he taught genjutsu theory on Wednesdays and Fridays. And once a year on a date in July, he stood in the Uchiha cemetery all day with his head bare where people could see him doing it. And about 9 people came and stood with him now, and the number went up every year. He's going to be terrible at the paperwork, Itachi said. He's going to be catastrophic at the paperwork, Sasuke said. Shikamaru's already drafted a memo about it. Are you glad? Sasuke Uchiha watched a man with his hands in his pockets get a hat put on his head by an old man who should have been ash on a rooftop 6 years ago. I put my hand through his chest, he said, and on the way out he held my face. Sasuke, I'm glad. Sasuke's arms folded. I'm going to be insufferable about being glad. I've got a lot of years to make up. Gaara of the desert came, and Temari came with him and stayed, which caused Inara a great deal of visible suffering. Nagato of Amegakure came on his legs and stood at the back where nobody had to look at him, and Konan stood beside him with paper flowers in her hair, and the village hidden in the rain sent its first delegation to a foreign ceremony in 51 years. And when it was over, and the 11,000 people had gone home, and the sun was going down behind the monument where they'd already started carving a 6th face, Naruto Uzumaki walked out of the academy and turned east instead of west, and went along the eastern market with the hat under his arm. Every door on that street was open. They'd started leaving them open about a year after the invasion, and by now, nobody could remember whose idea it had been. And there was a rule about it that had never been written down. And the greengrocer's stall had a bowl of pears on the corner that anybody could take from. He climbed the fire escape of the flower shop because he knew who'd be up there. She'd been up there since dawn. Hinata Hyuga was 19 years old and a jonin, and had led 4 squads in the war, and had held the eastern line at the second ridge for 11 hours. And she was sitting on the edge of a flower shop roof with her arms around her knees. And she'd watched the entire ceremony from 400 yards away, which was her whole life in one sentence. She heard him land behind her and went absolutely still. "Hey," Naruto said. "Hokage-sama." "Nope, Yoi." Naruto-kun. He came and sat down on the edge next to her and put the hat on the roof tiles between them. And the two of them looked at the village for a while, and the lamps were coming on in it street by street. Hinata's hand went up to her own cheek, half an inch under her eye. She'd done it 11,000 times in 11 years and had never once caught herself doing it. Naruto watched her do it. "You were 6, he said. She stopped breathing. Alley off the East Road. 3 guys from Kumo. Torn coat. He tilted his head. "One of them put a kun in my shoulder and I pulled it out. And I gave you my jacket, 'cause yours was ruined. And you didn't say anything the whole time. And then 5 years later I fixed your cheek on a training ground and you didn't say anything then either." He shrugged. "And you've been on this roof every time something's gone wrong in my life since. You were up here when I carried Sasuke in. You were up here the morning after the invasion. You were on this exact roof at 4 in the morning when the sky went gold." Hinata Hyuga put both hands over her face. "You knew." "Course I knew, Yoi. I can see heat. For how long?" "About 9 years." He put his hands in his pockets. "I figured you'd get there." "I couldn't." Her voice came out through her fingers and it broke in the middle. Every single time I was going to, something happened, or you got bigger, or the whole world found out about you and there was a crater. And how does anybody just walk up to that, Hinata?" She lowered her hands. Naruto Uzumaki was looking straight at her. Not past her, not half-lidded, not at the horizon over her shoulder. At her. "You've been looking at me for 11 years, Hinata," he said. "Say it slow, Yoi." She said it. She said it slow, and it took her about 9 seconds, and she got all the way to the end of it without stopping, and her hands were shaking so badly that she had to hold onto the roof tile with one of them. Naruto Uzumaki listened to the whole thing. Then he reached over and put his palm against her cheek, right under her eye, half an inch where a scrape had been 11 years ago, and there wasn't any fire in his hand at all this time, just a hand. "Cool," he said. Hinata Hyuga laughed and cried at the same time on the roof of a flower shop, and hit him on the shoulder, and then didn't take her hand off it. They sat up there until it got full dark, and then they went and got dinner at a ramen stand where an old man named Teuchi had never once in 20 years let a bill get to the table, and the whole village left its doors open all night the way it had learned to. Somewhere above the eastern market, a single blue ember came loose off a shoulder and went up on the warm air, turning over, gold at the edges, cooling as it climbed. It went out somewhere over the monument, above 6 carved faces, and nobody saw it go.
Thanks for watching the full movie. If that hit different, smash subscribe for more insane what-ifs that actually go all the way. Drop the next power-up you want to see in the comments. See you in the next one.